all things, we humbly ask that you enter our hearts and this place and give us your peace, wisdom, understanding, and love. We come in your name, asking you, O God, honor our requests. Bless each and every member of this body, every family and community represented. Anoint these men and women to do your will and to seek your face as they lead with courage, justice, unity, and humility. Hear our prayer, O God, for you are a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble, and a tower of strength for those who seek after you. Continue to be gracious to us, O God, according to your loving kindness, according to the greatness of your compassion. Forgive us of all of our sins and shortcomings. Purify us from all unrighteousness. God, we trust in you and your unfailing love, and our hearts rejoice in your perfect salvation. I ask that you guide these servant leaders and remind them that the greatest among them will be the servant to all. And the best way to serve you, O God, is by serving others. We thank you for the call that you have placed on their lives, and we are grateful for the dedication and commitment that they have shown in response to that call. We therefore ask for your continued grace, mercy, and favor to assist them in performing their duties. God, please continue to bless this place. Thank you, God, that you will never leave us nor forsake us. God Most High, we thank you for being our God, our peace, and our comfort. Thank you for hearing our prayer and being the God that answers. It is in your beautiful, wonderful, anointed, matchless name that is above every name that can be named that we do pray. Amen. Amen.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just want to thank Pastor Benevolent Coggins for being here, and just want to tell you a little bit about her. She's a 25-year resident of Charles County. She and her family, her husband Turner Jr., they have 4 children, and I think Turner, her husband, didn't make it yet. He's parking the car, and so today it's kind of tough to find parking in Annapolis, so he should be in here shortly. So Benevolent and Turner, they have 4 children, Turner the third, his wife Michelle, Constance, Brittany, and William, and 2 grandchildren, Faith and Cora. Benevolent has educated and inspired her community in both the classroom and the pulpit. She was employed as a computer science instructor at both the College of Southern Maryland and for the Charles County Public Schools, in addition to serving as a founder and pastor of According to the Word Church in La Plata, Charles County, Maryland. I just want to say, as a servant leader, Benevolent understands that we all have the responsibility to be the difference that we seek. And she demonstrates this through the untiring service that she renders to others. Pastor Coggins is an anointed woman of God, Holy Spirit-filled, and gifted teacher and preacher. She has a bachelor's in computer science and just a tremendous asset to the community of Charles County and to the state of Maryland. I just want to say she served as president and now treasurer of the Willing Helper Society, the historic Willing Helper Society, which is the longest operating African-American self-help organization in the country, operating over 100 years. So going back before the 60s, African-Americans before couldn't get insurances, couldn't get a lot of services that commercial companies offered. So we had these self-help organizations that set up throughout the nation to help African-Americans, benevolent societies, mutual help societies. And that organization, Willing Helpers, still exists in La Plata, and I'm happy to say I'm a longtime member of that. So tremendous service, tremendous presence in the community. So thank you, Mr. President and colleagues, for allowing me to share a little bit about Pastor Benevolent Coggins, and I ask for her prayer be journalized.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, we will journalize the pastor and thank her for her work. Journalize the invocation this morning. Has everyone recorded their presence? It appears so. The clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, we have a few presentations this morning. It's a busy, busy day. So let's start with introductions. Folks in the gallery. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, this is not a person in the gallery. It's a person sitting here on the left side of the chamber. This is our doctor of the day, Dr. Harry Kaplan. This is his first time here. He's an internist and a proud resident of District 42.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess all of us have had opportunities to learn how to debate over the course of our lives, and I have to say that I enjoy it, and it's because probably since the time I was 2 years old, I had someone who was smarter than me, more relentless, but has been my fellow traveler my entire life. I'd like the body to welcome my brother, John. He's in the gallery today.
Welcome, John.
And also his partner, Akeisha Johnson. Please welcome her as well.
Welcome. We're so pleased to have you. We know how much your sister loves you. Loves you both. Yes, Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Above me, or rather behind me, is someone many of you know well, my Chief of Staff, Dwayne Rager. But more importantly, joining him and me today are his wife, Lisa Rager, and their young son, Dewey Rager. Please welcome the little man and his parents.
And happy Maryland Day. All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from Howard and Carroll counties.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I have special guests in the gallery behind me, students from the Carroll County Student Government Association, both officers and staff, along with the regional advisor for the Carroll County Government Association, Ryan Melhorn, who is also the secondary social studies supervisor for Carroll County Public Schools. These students are going to be with us today, both on the watching the floor session and also in committee, and I'm sure that they'll find some similarities and some differences between our legislative process and theirs. But let's give them a warm round of applause.
Welcome. You all picked a great day to come, a great day to be here today. You'll see some real democracy in action. Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore County.
Yes, thank you. It is Maryland Day, but it is also Greek Independence Day today.
Yes.
So that's why I have my blue and my white and my red and my black and yellow. So I just had to do it. And as we speak, my granddaughter is marching through her little Greek school with her flag. So.
Very good. Well, I will be out there on Ponca Avenue in Greektown on Sunday doing the Greek Independence Day Festival. So a fun event every year. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest upstairs, someone who is very familiar to you all. One of my predecessors, former Secretary of Health. Let's give a warm welcome home, Bobby Neal.
Welcome back, Senator. Nothing better than being a senator. Secretaries, meh. Senator, that's where it's at. Great to see you. All right, any further? Yes, do we have a resolution? Do we have guests, students? Protocol. Okay, do we have protocol though? Let's see. Okay, let's do protocol first. We'll do, and then we'll do the team after. Chair recognizes the co-chair of the protocol committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senators, today we get to say goodbye to the students. This is their second week with us virtually. Many have been on the floor with us as well. So please, let's send them off with a best wishes and good luck in all of your future endeavors. And so I will read off the list. Denver Brown from Frederick County, District 4, Governor Thomas Johnson High School. Ray Joan Carter, Baltimore City, District 40, National Academy Foundation. Samuel Chernoff, Charles County, District 28, Morris J. McDonough High School. Taylor Grace, Somerset County, District 37A, Crisfield High School. Tanish Gupta, Washington County, District 2A, North Hagerstown High School. Kylie Johnson, Hartford County, District 34A, Havre de Grace High School. Frederick Jorgensen, Howard County, District 9B, Centennial High School. Caroline Keller, Anne Arundel County, District 33, Archbishop Spalding High School. Unameki, Montgomery County, District 16, Richard Montgomery High School. Caroline Mulford, Anne Arundel County, District 33, Archbishop Spalding High School. Gabrielle Rosella, Frederick County, District 4, Oakdale High School. Raylan Sachs, Baltimore County, District 34B, Notre Dame Preparatory School. Katerina Valdez Lane, Montgomery County, District 14, James Hubert Blake High School. And Joseph Zolkiewicz, Carroll County, District 4, South Carroll High School. Students, thank you so much. We wish you so well and hope you had a wonderful experience here in the Maryland Senate. God bless you all. Let's give them a round send-off. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to our pages who have been wonderful virtual participants. Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this Sunday, after you've gone to the Greek parade, you'll probably go home and watch the Oscars, and I want you to remember this name. There's a young man by the name of Dante Winslow, and he has a tremendous story going from homeless onto an international stage. Dante Winslow is a composer, conductor, lead orchestra, arranger, and trumpeter for the 94th Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars. He is also composing music for the theater play Blues for the Alabama Sky, directed by Felicia Rashad, and film composer for a new movie that releases in the fall of 2022, starring Wesley Snipes and Tiffany Haddish. He recently performed in this year's halftime feature with Dr. Dre, making this his third Super Bowl performance and his third Oscar performance. Dante is a filmmaker composer who graduated from the Peabody Conservatory of Johns Hopkins University, as well as the Baltimore School for the Arts. A Baltimore native, father of three, and husband to an amazing singer and songwriter, Mashakita Winslow. Colleagues, this Sunday, please keep Dante in mind as you watch the Oscars. He can't be listening right now because he's in LA. He has a little bit of time before us, but he'll be listening to it later this afternoon. But please give a round of applause for the accomplishments that this extraordinary man has.
Thank you, Senator, for that observation. Thank you so much. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 37th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, today the Rural Maryland Council invites you again when you leave here at Lawyers Mall from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. They will be providing a box lunch for all who have reserved in recognition of our Maryland farmers, watermen, and rural communities in celebration of Maryland Day, as you well know. Maryland Day celebrates the formal founding of the colony of Maryland on each March 25th, and 1634 was that original day. So the bag lunch comes from Caroline County's own Chesapeake Culinary Center and will include locally produced foods as well as examples of crabby corn, iced sugar cookies, and green spirulina smoothies. So be sure to stop by for your treats. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and bring the team on, and we'll recognize the Senator from Prince George's County as we bring on our championship team. That must have been a post-game injury. All right. Didn't make it. I think we're good. We need the fives in the back here, you know, right? All right. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This introduction today is not meant to rub salt into another Montgomery County wound. But just a couple of weeks ago, at the 4A state championship, the Eleanor Roosevelt Raiders defeated the Churchill Bulldogs in double overtime. The final game of the season, the last game, double overtime. It couldn't get more exciting than that. The final score was 54-49. And I think it's important to note, last year, obviously COVID destroyed a lot of athletics. And so these young men really had to put a lot of things on hold, and it was pretty frustrating to be on the sidelines. But they came out with a determination that is really very, very impressive. And Eleanor Roosevelt is a gem, both athletically and academically, in Prince George's County, a school we're very proud of. They're joined today by head coach Brennan O'Connell, assistant coaches Sean Miller and Tony Davis. And besides winning the state championship a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, this is the 5th state championship in the last 15 years, I believe. 5 state championships. And, many, many years ago, other schools had that record in the 80s and 70s, Fairmont Heights High School and some others. But they've won 5, and this was the 5th one, and it really, coming off that tough year emotionally, not being able to apply what you've practiced for many, many years, very important to these young men. So, Mr. President, we're very proud of them. We're proud of the team that came in second. So with that being said, I would ask that the clerk please read the resolution in full.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Eleanor Roosevelt High School boys varsity basketball team in recognition of winning the 2022 Class 4A boys basketball state championship. We applaud your winning season and wish you many more. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 25th day of March 2022.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Uh-oh. If so, the clerk will take the call. Gentlemen, the Senate of Maryland sincerely and deeply congratulates you on your 2022 4A boys basketball state championship, 5 in the last 15 years. Truly remarkable. Congratulations. All right, I think we're trying to get a picture here. All right, excellent. Congratulations. Keep up that great work on the court and the classroom, both places. Appreciate you all. Congratulations on the victory. Great futures ahead. All right. If we could get all senators in their seats, please. We are about to have a presentation. Chair of Budget and Tax. Clearly. All right. As today is Maryland Day, and it's also the 250th anniversary of the construction of this incredible State House, not this part, but the longest actively running component of the State House. We have a very special presentation. And so if the Sergeant at Arms could please open the doors. Welcome. This is a truly, truly special day and special presentation. This past Saturday, as many of you all know, a new gavel was dedicated at a beautiful ceremony at the Baltimore Basilica. Yesterday, it sailed aboard the Pride of Baltimore II to make its way here to the Maryland State House. Today, it is being presented to the Senate by the Maryland Society of the Sons of the Revolution. Founded in 1892, the Honorable John Lee Carroll, a former governor of Maryland and great-grandson of Charles Carroll, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, was its first president. As the upper house of the legislature, I'll say capital U, upper house of the legislature, we especially appreciate our history and traditions, as our annual George Washington birthday celebration in the Old Senate Chamber, our first Citizen Awards, which we presented several weeks ago, and recognizing Marylanders who have been dedicated and effective participants in the process of making government work for the benefit of all. Today, for our presentation, we have with us on the floor and in the galleries the officers and the board of the Society of the Sons of Revolution in the state of Maryland, the 3rd United States Army Infantry Regiment Honor Color Guard Fife and Drum Corps. Representing the Pride of Baltimore, we have Jason Williams, President and CEO, Jeffrey Burkheit, Executive Director, and Jan Miles, Captain. We also have with us reenactors portraying members of the Maryland 400. I would like to recognize the Maryland State Archivist, Elaine Rice-Bachman, and her staff, who are above in the gallery, who have provided throughout this process important support to so many of this event, but many of our Senate traditions. I would now like to invite Scott Watkins of the Sons of the Revolution's Historic Projects Committee and the creator of the Liberty Tree Wye-Oak Senate Gavel to the dais for the presentation.
Mr. Senate President, members of the Maryland State Senate, on behalf of the Society of Sons of the Revolution of the state of Maryland, Thomas R. Hosford, President, and former President Dennis Lee Peters, I present you with the Liberty Tree Wye-Oak Senate Gavel, made from 2 very iconic trees, the Liberty Tree, which stood only a few yards or maybe a half mile from this building, and the Wye-Oak, which stood in Talbot County. 2 very historic trees that really are the very symbol of Maryland. And I present this to you now on behalf of for the people and the Senate of Maryland.
Thank you, sir.
May I discuss it a little bit?
Please, please.
Yeah, I'll do a couple things. I'm going to give you a little tour of the gavel first. You know, many great things happened in this beautiful building, many firsts, and the gavel really signifies everything that happened. So if you'll notice, the light turns in the gavel. Each one represents a moment in history here in the State House. For instance, one turn represents Washington's resignation. Another turn represents the fact that the Treaty of Paris was ratified here. Another one was the call to the states for the Continental Convention to reconvene in Philadelphia to draft the Constitution. Other turns represent the burning of the Peggy Stewart, of which the Liberty Tree is best known for, when the Sons of Liberty met under it. William Paca, several other signers of the Declaration of Independence rallied people, the Sons of Liberty, under the Liberty Tree to hear their speeches. Other turns involved are like this main turn, which really credits Maryland. In 1649, Lord Baltimore Cecilius Calvert was responsible for the Act Concerning Religion, which many scholars believe, and also some of the founding fathers believe, was really the inspiration for the First Amendment of the Constitution. That's something we should be all very, very proud of. The 7 turns on the handle represent Maryland, the 7th state. The sterling silver cap, the coat of arms of Lord Baltimore, and of course his wonderful motto, brave deeds, wise and gentle words in the modern vernacular today. And of course, the 3 turns that represent the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. At the top here is an acorn, which represents the dome of the State House, which of course is representative of the human potential to grow even more and more. And we wish that when you use this in good health, that for the people of Maryland, that we continue to grow more and more as a society and as a great state. And thank you. Now the rest, yes, but wait, there's more. This is the sounding board. And if you'll notice the star in the center, that's made from the root of the Liberty Tree. I'm proud to say we have one of our artisans here today. There were 5 artisans who made this piece. His name is Thomas Brown. Thomas, would you stand up, please? Applaud. He was very clever in that we were trying to figure out how to get the best use of the root. When you flip over the sounding board, you see the smooth star, right? And when you flip it over is the rough exposed root of the Liberty Tree. In a way, it's very, very poetic in the fact that the strength of the Y oak from the eastern shore, the same place of where Harriet Tubman came from, is the strength that is supporting the very delicate wood of the roots of the Liberty Tree, the old tulip poplar that stood not far from this great State House. This box is very telling. It all tells a story. It's kind of like a puzzle. So you've noticed all the turns in the gavel. Each silver strip is telling you what each turn means. So we have everything from the Act Concerning Religion to the Call to the States for the Constitution, the resignation of George Washington, the Association of Maryland Freemen of 1776. It goes on and on, all the great things that happened here. So when you look at the gavel and see the box, while you're looking at the turns, the little silver strips tell you about every event that happened. The burning of the Peggy Stewart, the resignation of Washington. They can go on and on. They're all here, and they're represented in the gavel and then told by the box. If you'll notice the sort of, if you will, Queen Anne or colonial footing, it gives you the idea of where we were as a colony. And then as it progresses up, it's kind of a neoclassical look with the reeds. There are 24 reeds in this box, 24 battles that Maryland fought in the Revolution. We were really known as Washington's elite force. This box is dedicated to the Maryland 400, which I'm proud to say I'm a descendant of one of them, and many of our members are too. They saved George Washington's army at the Battle of Long Island, the largest and first battle of the American Revolution. Had Washington been captured, and it was sure that he would be, the revolution would have ended while the ink was still drying on the Declaration of Independence. It was the Maryland troops who were called up, greatly outnumbered. They charged the British lines 5 times. As Washington is retreating, he sees his Marylanders, his brave Marylanders, give their lives for liberty. And he said, "My God, what brave lads I lose this day, they shall ever be my old line." And that's how we have the nickname, the Old Line State. It's something we can be proud of, because it took a small number of people who believed in something and really turned the odds around and gave the Army another day to fight and live. If it hadn't been for them, this all would have been ended very quickly in August of 1776.
Should we see if it works?
I'm going to tell you one more thing. Sorry. I know there's a lot here. The base of this is made from a tree that belonged to Henry Thompson in Baltimore. He was the honor guard for Sam Smith in defense of Baltimore. And we wanted to have this on the bottom to remind everyone that ultimately this is for the Old Line State, but it came from the land of the free and the home of the brave. Because Baltimore is our home, and Maryland is our home. And I think the whole idea that the two combined, and I want to say one thing, nothing could be more poetic than to have the pride of Baltimore come and deliver this. A very symbol of our state, its goodwill, our maritime heritage, our early heritage in this country, and the fact that it was brought here, this very special item, means very much. Certainly the pride of Baltimore is a real representative of the land of the free and the home of the brave, and of course to deliver this great item to, of course, the great Old Line State. And yes, be my guest and use it. You want to use that side?
Lightly, right?
Yes. Thank you all. I'll say one more time.
I don't want to drop it. It is so incredible. Look, this is a truly, truly special item that because of our President Emeritus Miller, who this has been in the works for several years, and we were supposed to have this ceremony in March of 2020, and of course, March of 2020 is when the whole world stopped. And so we are now here again in March of 2022, but is quite poetic because it is the 250th year of this State House. So it worked out well to celebrate Maryland Day on this day with this incredible presentation. We do have a resolution that we would like to have prepared. We'd ask the clerk to read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Maryland Society of the Sons of the American Revolution in recognition of the gift of a new gavel for the Senate of Maryland, created from the Maryland Liberty Tree and the White Oak in memory of the Maryland 400. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 25th day of March, 2022.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To all of the presenters here today, to the Sons of the Revolution, to Scott, thank you very much. This resolution unanimously celebrates your work and is a token of appreciation for your incredible efforts and dedication to the Senate of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. We're all very proud to be Marylanders. Mashi Fati Parol Famine. Brave deeds, wise and gentle words. Thank you all for your service. We're very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come up this side? Yes. Thank you all so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you here. And as we said on Saturday, that before there was a House of Delegates, before there was a governor, before there was a U.S. Congress, there was a Senate of Maryland, the rock of democracy. Those doors were not meant for flag bearing. All right. Okay. Very nice way to start off the day. We've got a long day ahead. Do we have any other business before we jump into things today? Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th? Nope. Okay. Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th district.
Yeah, Mr. President, colleagues, I just want to take this opportunity to recognize Pastor Coggins' husband and son, Turner Coggins III. Please stand up. And Cora and Faith, grandchildren. So they finally made it in. So welcome.
Welcome, welcome. We're glad you found parking. Which one is Cora? Oh, well, Cora, I've got a Cora too. So your parents named you well there. Wonderful. All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th district.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, my longtime secretary, Ms. Gail Morton, who'd been out for some time now dealing with issues, is back in the office today. So if folks, anybody who knows Gail, please feel free to stop by and welcome her back into Annapolis.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead. Without objection, we will waive the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We'll start with an announcement by the President. The clerk will read the message.
In accordance with Rule 33D, the following legislation has been reassigned. House Bill 1343, Delegate Lukey, major state contractors, donations to advocacy organizations, disclosure, reassigned to Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs, and Budget and Taxation.
All right, message having been read will be adopted, and the bill will be referred to the appropriate standing committees. Senators, we have a message from the executive. The clerk will read the message.
Dear Mr. President, pursuant to the authority conferred on me by Article 3, Section 52, subsection 5 of the Constitution of Maryland, and in accordance with the consent of the House of Delegates duly granted, I hereby submit supplemental budget number 3 to Senate Bill 290, House Bill 300, in the form of an amendment to the budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Supplemental budget number 3 affects the previously estimated funds available for budget operations. Sincerely, Lawrence J. Hogan, Jr., Governor.
Message having been read is ordered journalized. Senators, this is an important supplemental budget here. We want to appreciate the administration for this budget. You will see a lot of important initiatives that were reflected in some of the budget that we put forward in the Senate, and so it's always positive to see continued working together. We're getting closer and closer to the end here, and we've got a good opportunity with the budget this year. All right, I think we have everyone here. Let's do a quick quorum call before third reading calendar while we have everyone.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. This is calendar number 66. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 23, Senator Carter, Equity in Transportation Sector Guidelines and Analysis.
All right, Senate Bill 23 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 23, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 720, Senator Kelly, State Board of Examiners of Nursing Home Administrators, renaming licensure of assisted living managers and penalties.
All right, Senate Bill 720 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 720, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 753, Senator Hester, Education and Labor and Employment, Cyber Warrior Diversity Program and Workforce Development for Cybersecurity.
Senate Bill 753 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 753, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 955, Senator Benson, Maryland School for the Deaf, Professional Personnel and Staff Service Designation, Assignment, and Placement in a Collective Bargaining Unit.
Senate Bill 955 is on third reader for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 955, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we're going to have a probably extended debate today, so we're not going to do too. We're going to try and clear the decks as much as possible and quickly go through a few things. We're going to start with layover calendar number 46. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 652, Senator Castley, Criminal Law, Murder of a Police Officer, Kiana Holly Public Safety Act. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable report.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to special order this until Monday.
All right, any objections? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to Monday. We've got layover calendar number 47. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 773, Senator Carter, Public Safety, Firearms Dealers, Storage Vaults for Regulated Firearms. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to special order this bill to the appropriate time on Monday.
All right, any objections? Without objection, so ordered. We've got a special order calendar number 66. Clerk will read the report.
Executive Nominations Report number 6, nominee number 15. Question is, will the Senate advise and consent to the nomination of the executive?
All right, Senators, the question before the body is, will the Senate advise and consent to the nomination of the executive? This is nominee number 15. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, nominee number 15 is advised and consented to affirmatively. All right, we've got a couple second readers here. Let's do the report from Committee on Budget and Taxation. This is report number 29. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 975, Senator Jennings, Property Tax Exemption, Disabled Veteran, Active Duty, and Surviving Spouse, Application Process, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have a existing property tax exemption for disabled veterans and their surviving spouses. This bill actually allows for those individuals to effectively pre-apply for the exemption and requires SSTAT to let the individual know if they are preliminary approved or denied for the exemption. The bottom line is it gives the individual a better idea of what their overall financial status is, knowing whether or not they're going to be receiving this, and allow them to make better decisions and easier decisions about the house that they want to purchase. There are 2 committee amendments. The first is technical, the second lays out the procedural steps required for the pre-approval application. Move adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 975 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. All right, before we leave budget and tax, let's do the, we've got the budget bill not concur. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 290, the President, Budget Bill, Fiscal Year 2023.
All right, Chair recognizes the Chair of the committee to not concur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to not concur.
All right, the chairman has moved to not concur with the amendments made by the House. Are there any objections? Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will read the message.
By the majority leader, ladies and gentlemen of the House of Delegates, the Senate refuses to concur in the House amendments and respectfully requests the House recede from its position. Should the House prefer a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses, the Senate appoints Senator Gazzoni, Senator Griffith, Senator McCray, Senator King, Senator Rosapep. In addition, the Senate has appointed in advisory capacity Senators Jackson, Young, and Edwards. Said bill is returned herewith by order Nicole Alexander, Secretary.
All right. Message. I don't know what's happened. All right. Let's do, we got a report on the budget and tax. Oh, message having been read is adopted. The clerk will read we have calendar number 28, still out of budget and tax. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 904, Senator Benson, Maryland Higher Education Commission, formerly Incarcerated Youth Grant Program established, favorable with 2 amendments.
All right. Chair, let's see, we have, do we have a floor leader here? 902, 904. Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Mr. President, Senate Bill 904, as introduced, as amended, establishes the Returning Youth Grant Program to provide eligible students who receive federal grants with matching state funds to support formerly incarcerated students in attending an institutional post-secondary education in the state. The Office of Student Financial Assistance must award a grant under the program to each eligible student who applies and receives a federal Pell Grant. Grants must be equal to the amount of the Pell Grant that the eligible student received, but not more than $3,000, Mr. President. Department of Public Safety and Correction Services, Division of Parole and Probation, and the Department of DJS must periodically provide information about the program and grant application process to individuals who may be eligible for this grant program. There were 2 committee amendments, just read them. The first renames the program to Returning Youth Grant Program. The second allows a recipient to receive a grant for up to 3 years and clarifies the allowable use of the grants. Move adoption of the amendments in the favorable committee report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 904 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, let's go to the second readers out of finance. This is calendar number 21. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 460, Senator Augustine, Consumer Health Access Program for Mental Health and Addiction Care Establishment, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, sometimes, you know, if you have a loved one or yourself, you're involved in a behavioral health crisis, you know the first step that you will do is maybe go to an emergency room or something like that. But what happens after that has occurred? What do? Who do you call? You might try to call a primary care doctor that you may have, but they may or may not have an idea about behavioral health or behavioral health resources. You may look to your insurance when you're trying to make an appointment for somebody, and then you find that the closest person is out of state. Where do you turn? That's what this piece of legislation is about. This piece of legislation, as amended, Senate Bill 460, establishes the Consumer Health Access Program for Mental Health and Addiction Care to provide consumer assistance services and collect and analyze data to identify and help resolve barriers to mental health and substance use disorder treatment. The program must be administered by the incubator entity, the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Social Work, Center for Addiction, Research, Education, and Services, and a hub entity selected by the incubator. The program must conduct a 3-year pilot program to provide customer assistance service through the hub and entity and additional spoke entities. The bill establishes an associated special fund and requires the governor to provide an appropriation of $1 million to the fund in fiscal years 2024 through 2026. The bill also establishes that the Health Education Advocacy Unit in the Office of the Attorney General is the state's Office of Consumer Assistance under federal law. Amendment 1 is technical and adds a sponsor. Amendment 2 establishes the Health Education Advocacy Unit as the Office of Consumer Assistance as described, defines consumer assistance services in other terms, and establishes the purposes of the program as described. The amendment also establishes a Consumer Health Access Program Advisory Council and terminates the council in the event the pilot program terminates after the 3-year period. Colleagues, I worked very hard with the Maryland Insurance Administration and with the Health Education Access Unit on this, and I'm grateful for that help. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the senator from the 37th district.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator. That looks like a pretty interesting program. One question, had the Maryland Community Health Resources been involved with this program? Because I know they have been like our innovation and incubator for various programs after there's been an established need around the state.
I am not aware they were not a part of this particular entity that we were looking to stand up.
I was just going to say, because, you know, historically they were created to be able to develop those out of the needs across the state. So this seems to be a deviation from that, a change in that. And then did you also involve our core service agencies, our behavioral health agencies around the state, because they become the mental health authorities? And I'm just wondering if some of what you're establishing may already be available in some of the local jurisdictions. So I just didn't know if they had been consulted.
What I did do is we worked extensively with the National NAMI. I'm trying to not use abbreviations, although I know you're familiar with them, Senator. I worked with NAMI and other stakeholders, including the Maryland Behavioral Health Association, as you're aware of, and also we had supporting testimony from other organizations, including the Maryland Coalition of Families, who were favorable, and worked also closely with the Legal Action Center, who we've worked with in the past on these matters.
Thank you very much. I was just interested because what I'm seeing happen this year is a lot of creation of new programs, And I guess my concern is when we have established programs and we're creating new ones, many times the older ones don't get funded, and then we run into these kind of clashes at the local level. So I just wanted to make sure that all the players that need to be involved were involved at the table to make sure we have a good product. So
I absolutely appreciate that, Senator. And as I mentioned in talking about this, the gap remains there, and this is meant to be additive, not to take away from anything at all. It's going to be a place to coordinate as well. But what we don't have right now is this hub and spoke for this as a resource for people to be able to access directly, but it is absolutely the intent for it to work in conjunction with and be additive to it, because it's such a tremendous problem, as you are well aware.
great. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendments, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 460 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 829, Senator Klossmeyer, Department of Human Services, Family Investment Program, Contract and Program Review, favorable with two amendments.
829. Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Department of Human Services is authorized to enter into contracts with private entities to serve Family Investment Program participants. Senate Bill 829 requires the department to annually review each contract in order to report on overall program impact, interim progress towards employment outcomes for families who left the FIP, and the number of participants experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. These contractors are also required to make sure their programs are accessible. In addition, the department must hire an outside consultant to conduct a review of the FIP to assess the extent to which it is implementing policies equitably and employing best practices to achieve the best outcomes. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes performance-based incentives for the contractors and compensations for specified stakeholders, changes a certain start date, alters criteria in the FIP review, and authorizes a reallocation of funds to complete the FIP review. There was no opposition at the committee hearing, and I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 829 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 994, Senator Eckert, Public Health, Mental Health Advanced Directives, Awareness and Statewide Database, favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you. As amended, Senate Bill 994 requires that the Maryland Department of Health develop and implement a public awareness campaign to encourage the use of mental health advanced directives in the state. Amendment 1 is technical and adds sponsors. Amendment 2 strikes a requirement that the Behavioral Health Crisis Response System develop and maintain a centralized statewide database of mental health advanced directives, and instead requires the Behavioral Health Administration to study the feasibility and cost of establishing a centralized statewide database of mental health advanced directives as specified, and alters the bill's effective date. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leaders move for the adoption of the two committee amendments of the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I want to say thank you to the committee, to all who have worked on this. We've struggled for years with what's called an outpatient commitment, which means when somebody has a serious and persistent episode in their course of their mental illness, and either the police have to be involved or the first responders or any other providers, it would be really helpful to avoid further exacerbation of that episode with behavior that may be out of control, and be able to get people on the right medication at the right time, and this might be one way to do that, so we don't have to go down that other road. So thank you to everybody who's worked on this to move it forward. It's very important.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendments, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 994 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to layover calendar number 45. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 890, Senator Kelly, Abortion Care Access Act. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, we had the floor report yesterday, so the question is on the two committee amendments. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you very much. We moved favorably on the bill, on the amendments.
All right, so questions on the amendments. Any discussion of the amendments? Discussion of the amendments? If not, on the amendments? Okay, if there is no discussion on the amendments, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today with a heavy heart in opposition to the favorable report and to share many objections to Senate Bill 890, which marks a dramatic change in Maryland's health policy that will negatively impact the health and safety of women across the state. This is not a debate about abortion being legal. This is about deep opposition to moving Maryland's already liberal abortion laws to the extremes, especially when it comes to late-term abortions and places women's health at risk. My colleagues, there are multiple medical and health professionals who do not consider abortion to be valid health care, and many physicians and citizens, quote, do not want their hard-earned tax dollars subsidizing the abortion industry, which so frequently places abortion profits before the health of the women they should be serving. Instead of spending $3.5 million a year on abortion training, one Maryland emergency medicine physician testified, I can assure you these funds would be better invested in emergency medicine and primary care systems. Why not invest $3.5 million in nursing education for Maryland residents? When you read through the multiple submissions of unfavorable testimony, as I did last night and over the course of the week, you are struck by the pleas of urgency. For example, please do not endanger women by allowing non-physicians to perform abortion surgery. Through the state Medicaid program, Maryland taxpayers already pay several million dollars each year to abort approximately 4,000 healthy babies. Instead of spending more money on abortion, it's time to start supporting those women who often choose to continue their education through pregnancy and while raising a child. This statement is from a Vascular Access Board certified registered nurse. Quote, abortions are already risky. Severe injury and death can occur from hemorrhaging and infection. 1 in 50 surgical abortions require additional surgery to manage complications. Many Maryland abortions are beyond the first trimester, which increases risk. She goes on to testify, as a nurse, I know that changing our scope of practice is a serious matter. Allowing non-physicians to do abortions defies logic for those who say they care about women. When you read through Senate Bill 890, it is all about abortion expansion, which is the complete opposite of polling that indicates a majority of low-income women identify as pro-life, and 75% of Latinos and African Americans support abortion restrictions. This bill goes in the opposite direction. As we consider SB 890, let's also consider that the majority of Marylanders have always opposed using taxpayer money for abortion. One hearing witness wrote, "More outrageous in this bill is that the Maryland Department of Health will use the taxpayer money to train workers for a private industry," she writes, "that kills the youngest Marylanders." The same witness notes that insurance coverage in SB 890 is a dream come true for the abortion industry. The bill mandates that for certain insurers who provide labor and delivery, all cost of abortion, the most expensive and dangerous method of birth control, must be free to the patient, and the state mandates that certain adults age 18 through 40 who meet certain poverty guidelines will get a subsidy that covers 100% of the cost of the insurance premium. This might be fine in certain circumstances, except that in combination with a free abortion, it seems that the program is for eliminating the children of the poor. Today we are debating this monumental shift in Maryland's health policy impacting women and families on Maryland Day. Those first settlers who landed in 1634 on St. Clement's Island were seeking a safe haven. The Abortion Training Act is no safe haven. Instead, it puts the health of Maryland women at risk. And my friends and colleagues, I just ask, as we debate Senate Bill 890 and we ask our questions and we offer amendments to better protect Maryland women, let us focus on policies and votes that put the health of women and minors first and above other interests. This is a hard day, but on Maryland Day, let's see if we can make it a better one. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the report, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Thank you. I'm glad that you laid out a number of your different concerns, and let me try to begin to address the first one. Senate Bill 890 does not restrict abortions to just physicians, because there are many other health practitioners that now deliver babies, manage entire pregnancies for 9 months, and do everything that the physician does, so long as there isn't some unusual need for a physician to have to intervene. And a great number of them are done that way. You remember that we passed our bill for permitting abortion in 1991. And at that time, we limited, in order, as you know, when you're on the floor like this, to even get the base bill passed. It wasn't that all of these other practitioners couldn't have done abortions. And in fact, in many places they do. And they are doing all of the other procedures related to pregnancy management, except for abortion, because it's what Marylanders at that time voluntarily did, really to get the bill passed. So, and it has gone well for these years, except that at this point in time, we do not have enough persons to do abortions in Maryland, given the need. Most of our counties have not a single abortion provider in Maryland. And of course, we have to be alarmed, if you believe, as many of us do, that this is health care also for people that in some cases choose it, in other cases need to save their lives by having an abortion. And that they deserve to be served. We deserve to deal with the health care needs of all Marylanders. Maryland law now, therefore, is really outdated. As I said, we adopted it in 1991. That was prior to having nurse practitioners and a number of other kinds of well-trained health occupations, which now are involved in the delivery and the management of pregnancies. And so we want to update the law to reflect and to include those practitioners that now have the training and it's within their scope of practice and who would be licensed to do it also in Maryland. So that's what we're doing. We're just updating. These practitioners, as I said, provide miscarriage management. They provide delivery services, and in many cases, no physician sees many of the mothers before the child is here. Maybe the first doctor involved is a pediatrician, because clinical specialists who are within their scope of practice, and it's very different than it was in 1995 when our law came on the books, are in fact managing the entire pregnancy and the outcome. You are concerned about obstetricians and gynecologists not being put out of business because these other lesser folks would do something. You should know that the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists are among about 35 major organizations that are supporting the bill and have endorsed it, and look forward to helping us under the new regime when it is in place. I won't go further at the moment, but I hope that helps some, that the people that we're talking about would be within their scope of practice. They have the training to do it. We have the need in Maryland, and most of our counties lack even a single provider. So that outside of our women and girls, and remember we're talking about children, and when you talk about how nice it is and very scenic views of what it's like to hold a cuddly baby after it's born, that isn't life for many people. A child who's a victim of incest or rape and who has to deal with this can't do what the Supreme Court, newest Supreme Court justice suggested, is just do something nice and warm and cuddly, or go work on adoption. And so we have to deal with the world that is. It's not all beautiful. Things happen, and they sometimes happen to people who totally are victimized. They have made no choice to become a mom. They have taken no action that should make them have to bear a child. They are not prepared to be anybody else's parent. They still need to be parented and loved, and to have mental health services given the trauma they have experienced as an incest or rape victim. So I hope that answers some of what you're trying to get at.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And
Senator has not been recognized yet.
sorry.
Let's see if there are any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak, and we'll come back. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District.
Thank you very much. With the floor leader yield for a question.
Senator may proceed.
I appreciate all that you said, and I guess from being on the Eastern Shore and being around with that very intense discussion on the proposition in 1991 and 1992 is very painful. I would say it was as divisive and contentious with all kinds of threats as we've heard about on this floor before. And I guess I thought that all had been put to rest for a while. But I wanted to go back to something you were talking about, that we didn't have enough OB/GYN women health programs. And I would suggest, don't you think that the discussion and the laws that we put on the book regarding malpractice insurance contributed to maybe not as many OB/GYNs practicing?
Well, I'm not prepared to say today whether laws we put on the books years ago caused them not to practice. Maybe they went other places where they could make more, I don't know. But they certainly are not available to the degree that we need them right here in Maryland. And it might be less costly in many cases to have the other healthcare practitioners who would be within their scope of practice, and especially if the persons needing the abortion need Medicaid, for an example. And that was something else that at that time we did not permit, except in some rare instances. So we don't want to leave out people that are low income. We don't want the essential workers. Think of these hard-working essential workers that we've come to see more eye to eye during the pandemic. And they shouldn't be outpriced so that they can't get whatever medical services they need, including abortions, if that should be necessary.
Great, thank you very much. I think safety is a significant issue, and I would suggest that the cost of malpractice insurance has driven a lot of OB/GYNs out of business, and or they're working under the federally qualified health center. But I wanted to go back, right now, and this bill is, I think, a gross deviation from what we already have with regard to putting this in the Department of Health, a clinical training program. But I just wanted to go back to who currently can do surgical abortions.
In Maryland, because of the way we limited everything when we passed the bill in 1991, only a physician.
Okay, is there any time limit on when that can be done?
Well, we aren't changing time limits in this bill, whatever they are.
No, I just meant, I'm just trying to establish what is right now and where we're going from that, to make sure we're going to have safe practice.
We aren't changing how someone would do the abortion. We are after two or three things. One is to have enough providers who, within their scope of practice and their training and their licensing, could do them in Maryland, since we don't have enough persons practicing right now. That's one thing. The second thing is that we do want to be sure that Medicaid, where it is necessary, when you've got a Medicaid recipient or somebody whose income and circumstances would, for all other areas of practice, make Medicaid the payer, that they are not left without medical services that are absolutely necessary because Medicaid no longer can do it. So
yeah, but I think Medicaid already does fund abortions, and it's already for the mental health of the mom, and that's the category that is under there. So a qualified provider in the bill, what qualifies somebody to be a provider if we're going to open it up to other than physicians?
That the person would have the training, and it would be within their scope of practice. And so we are arranging in the bill for additional training for some of the related providers who in other states and elsewhere, in fact, do perform the abortions, and who right now manage pregnancies from the time they are first recognized through to delivery and do the deliveries.
Okay, so this bill then will authorize a number of different clinicians, as outlined in Title 10, to change their scope of practice. I'm just trying to get clear how we're going to do this. Is this Enabling
It doesn't change the scope of practice. It's
well, it
in
would.
their scope of practice right now, except that because of the bill that we passed in 1991, we limited at that time that only the physicians could.
Correct, but just for example, I don't think in every nurse practitioner, PA, anesthesiologist, nurse
Well, not
midwife-
every doctor would. If you're a heart specialist, you aren't going out there and attempt to deliver babies.
Right,
So we're
right.
talking about it's got to be within your scope of practice and your licensure.
Yes, but if a scope of practice is changed, it needs to be changed in the Nurse Practice Act, for instance, for nurses. And I'm just trying to get clear in my mind the mechanics of the bill. Is the bill enabling a change of scope of practice, or would the various boards need to promulgate regulations
No,
or
they
bring back another bill?
No, they wouldn't, because there's nothing in the Nurse Practice Act or any of the other acts restricting the people for whom this is within their scope of practice from doing it now. It is our Maryland law that we passed in 1991.
So that means, as a licensed nurse, I can do an abortion now.
I didn't say what you could do. You would have to be an advanced practice nurse.
I am.
Well, then you could if it's within your scope of practice and if you're licensed to do it.
I'm just
So
saying
the
that-
nursing board has got to license you.
Right. My understanding is that it has to be included in the scope of practice, and I wondered if the various boards had been contacted to clarify that, because we're going to have a collision if this bill is
There is
implemented.
no collision. They took no position on it because it doesn't bother them at all, because nothing unusual is going to happen. The
How do-
members who have the educational background and is within their scope of practice, and they are licensed as for that particular health occupation, could simply do it now, because there wouldn't be the legislative prohibition against it.
Right. Thank you very much. And I, with all due respect, I stay connected to the nursing community, and I asked my nurse colleagues if in fact they could do this now, and they told me no. They would need additional training to be able to do only first trimester abortions. So that's what I wanted to get clear in my mind, because I believe it's a safety issue. Mr. President,
Let me just tell you, all of your nursing occupational organizations in Maryland are in support of the bill. So you need to go look at the various subcategories of nursing organizations. They all support this bill.
being support of a bill is one thing, but I have found that many times this year in the drafting the bill, there are some issues that are going to render collisions further down the road, and I think it's important that we get clear about what is
Well,
scope
they
of
didn't come in and
practice.
bring them to our attention.
All right.
They knew that bill was before Senate
Right, I'm
Finance.
just saying
they
that
knew it was
as-
an HGO. They didn't come in.
But maybe we can get some clarification about that, because I think it is important. And the reason I'm concerned about this is that a number of years ago, we found that when this bill was passed in 92 or 91 in that area, nobody had done anything about the regulation of the outpatient abortion clinics or centers or offices. And we found that there was not adequate emergency equipment available, in the fact of in a place where a woman might bleed out afterwards, because we heard that there were folks being brought down. They were started the abortion process out of state. They were brought back
Do you
into
have a
the state.
question?
And so my question is, I want to make sure that there is safe practice. That's the bottom line. We want our moms and our little ones to all have a great chance of survival and thriving in a safe and accessible environment. And I'm just asking, how can I be assured that that is there with the way this bill is presented?
Well, I don't know how you can be assured, but those for whom this is within their scope of practice and their licensure do it in other states. They don't now because of just what we passed as an automatic prohibition in 1991. We are simply needing to make a legislative change. There's nothing else required. They already have the scientific and medical training to do it, and it's within their scope of practice.
Yes, thanks. As a nurse educator in the past, you need didactic and you need clinical opportunities to be expert in what you're doing, and thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. All right, on the report, Chair recognizes the Senator from 33rd District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, if I could ask some questions.
Senator may proceed.
Madam Chair, this is one of the times I wish I was in the committee because this is an important issue to me, as most of my peers know. And I have some questions so that not only myself, but the body can have a better understanding of what the bill does. So as I go through the bill, my first question relates to your comments about sufficient number of health professionals to provide abortion care. So when the hearing was in the committee, was there any specific data about the number of abortions that are performed, if there's a delay in women having access to that? Was there any hard data?
Well, it depends on what you want the data to prove. There is no statewide requirement that everybody who gets an abortion ends up in some kind of a state database. So it's like if the people who get heart surgery or anything else. So, yeah, 2/3 of our counties in Maryland don't have a single abortion provider.
You know something? That's a fact.
Yeah.
We're not gonna argue that fact.
Okay.
The question is, are women being delayed in getting abortions in the state of Maryland?
Obviously, if you live in one of those counties, in many cases, and you need to go to another county or out of state, if an out-of-state person might be the closest thing to you in order for you to get the service that you're seeking, yes, it would be a problem. There were a lot of people who live in some of those counties who advised us that it really is a problem for them.
Thank you very much for that. But you're missing my question. I understand it's inconvenient.
The thing
Madam
is
Chair,
that...
Madam Chair, if I can finish,
Sure.
please? Thank you very much. I understand it's inconvenience that somebody might have to drive 30 miles or 50 miles or 150 miles. But my question is, when they travel that distance, it's inconvenient, are they denied the ability to have an abortion?
Well, let me answer you this way. The first thing that is clear is that the fetus is developing more and more during a time when they're seeking to find a provider. And if you care, as I think many of you do, about not having it done very late in a gestational period, but as early as possible, it would make sense that you would want there to be providers that are prepared and are available, and not to have the person waste time, so they are forced to do it later in the gestational period.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, during the testimony, was there any discussion about the increased use of the abortion pill on the availability of having abortions?
No, we didn't discuss it because, it's not within our scope of practice. But we do know that if you're going to use a pill, you do it fairly early, which is another reason why it makes sense for many of the other practitioners who are in our various counties and for whom this would be within their scope of practice, because they are managing pregnancies that are going full term right now, to be able to be providers.
Thank you very much. So as we talk about the sufficient number of health professionals, it is my impression that the abortion pill is available at pharmacies. Is that the understanding of the committee?
I don't know. I never sought one, so I don't know if you can get it at a
Neither
pharmacy.
did I.
I guess if it's at a pharmacy, you probably can't get it just off the shelf. You need a prescription, which means you need a provider. It's not available. Right
What's not available?
The pills that you could just go in the pharmacy and pick them up. No, it's not an over-the-counter thing.
I understand it's not over the counter. So telemedicine, going to a local excuse the expression to Senator Dr. Doc in the Box. Those may not be abortion centers, but I presume you can go in and get a prescription for the pill. Now,
well, you can't get a prescription unless you have a provider who can give you the prescription, and if you live where there aren't any providers, you got a problem.
Okay. So the statistics given to us by the federal government agency said prior to 3 years ago, 35% of the abortions were done with a pill. The abortion pill, 35%. And since the federal regulators expanded that availability, 72% of early term abortions are being done with the pill. And it's my advocacy that that releases a whole lot of actual physical need to be in an abortion clinic, and I just want to make sure the body showed that.
Well, we don't have a record from anybody who knows the issue that there's all of this availability that you believe in.
Fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 4, line 3, this talks about the administering of grants. My eyes are going bad. I have to hold it out. Administering grants to develop and sustain abortion care training programs at a minimum of 2 community-based provider sites. Why did you request 2? Or why did I'm sorry, not you. Why did the bill request 2 community-based provider sites?
Well, just to have geographical proximity for people who are in various parts of the state.
Was there any discussion in the committee to have 4 or 6?
Well, no. We thought that in some of the more populated areas along the Baltimore-Washington corridor, there's more availability. In most of the rest of the state, that's where we have the problem. So going from nothing to trying to have at least 2 areas, we thought that would be convenient for people.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Later on in the bill, it talks about the organization that will be given the $3.5 million to distribute to training. Now, this coordinating group is not identified, and I'm wondering if in the committee there was any discussion of how many of these organizations there are in Maryland that can help provide the evaluation and the distribution of the money. Was there any discussion on any specific organizations?
Well, they didn't pick somebody already existing necessarily. The health department will put together the organization when there's a need for it. And if you don't pass the bill, there's no need. So we aren't going to create an organization to give a service until you pass the bill. So we need your help.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I love you to death, but I'm not going to vote for this bill.
Okay.
But it's a matter of understanding what the bill does. So this organization, is there any restriction in the bill that specifies how much of an administrative charge that they can take from the $3.5 million and how much is mandated to be sent to the training centers or the organizations or the continuing ed?
The department has the ability. The department's going to set it up, and just it is competent to set up other entities when we need them, and they are specified in law. The department will make those decisions.
Okay, so there's no discussion by the committee about
No, we're not going to try to do the
thank you very
department's
much.
job.
Okay, so now I'm on page 6 and the top of page 7 of the bill. And this is where the section says qualified providers means, as we have heard from our prior speakers, physicians, nurse practitioners, midwives, licensed certified midwives, physician assistants, and other individuals. So before I ask you my question, I want the indulgence of my peers to let you know that our 4th child was born by a midwife in a birthing house off of Kennedy Boulevard in downtown Montgomery County, and it was a great experience.
Great.
But it was there because it's very close to Holy Cross. And if anything adverse happened, the nurse midwives would not have the ability sometimes to handle very complicated birthing situations.
And that's important. You're blessed.
I am.
Because there are many people, parents looking forward to the birth of a child who couldn't have had that additional opportunity.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
But the midwives were very specific on their scope of practice, and they knew that they couldn't do an emergency C-section. If there was some other type of complication, the cord wrapped around the neck, they couldn't have that surgical experience to take care of it at the site. They're only a few short minutes away from the hospital. So my question is, when we look at our good medical providers, especially the OBGYNs, they go through an enormous amount of training. I wouldn't have the ability to do that. I'm not smart enough, I'm not focused enough, and I really admire folks who can do that. But let's take a physician's assistant. Now they have a certain level of training. I presume they can do blood pressure, draws, nebulizer treatments.
Many of them manage pregnancies all the way through from practically conception to delivery.
I agree. So is there any indication in the committee testimony that physician's assistants are capable of doing surgical abortion procedures or can be trained to that level, and I'm going to use a relative term, in a reasonable amount of time? Because that's very
But when
that's
you
very
start to
soft.
talk about surgical, that isn't a technical term that we can really define operationally. That could be many different things right away.
I understand that.
Okay, so we're using lay language when we say surgical.
Yes, absolutely.
If the fetus is practically at term, you're going to need a doctor.
But this bill allows a physician's assistant to do a abortion into the 9th month.
It has to be with their area of competency, so the bill is clear. It's got to be within your scope of practice for what you're licensed to do.
Yeah, I didn't
And the
read-
medical boards are going to determine what a given person has as scope of practice in their particular instance and what they're licensed to do. So we don't really have to worry about it. But they're doing this in 14 other states already.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So I'm looking in the bill for scope of practice definition. Could council help us to figure out which page and chapter and verse scope of practice in the bill? Because the chairman said it was clearly defined.
And it's clearly defined by their occupational boards and by law.
I'm sorry, so it's not in the bill?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's page 7,
Is
line
it, just the
2.
chair yields to the vice chair.
Just very briefly, page 7, line 2. And yes, scope of practice is not, it is within the purview of the professional boards. And in fact, if somebody approaches you about anything, I think Madam Chair mentioned, if you go to a dermatologist, this would not be within the scope of practice of a dermatologist. So the obsession about physicians, so this is within the Board of Ethics. There are rules, regulations, scope of practice provisions, training, all of that's there. So the term scope of practice references our professional boards. So hopefully that's helpful, Mr.
President, can I follow up real quick?
Madam Chair,
yeah.
on the question on the scope of practice, further yield to the vice chair.
Yeah. Senator?
Uh,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is a great example that I hadn't thought of, but thank you for bringing it to my attention. We have a dermatologist who wants to start doing abortion. So he goes to this organization, gets grants, and gets trained to a very high level of competency. He would then be able to do abortions.
Within his scope of practice, licensed, certified within his scope of practice as determined under all the rules and regs. And if he was outside the scope of practice, he would have a problem, both disciplinary with his board, potential malpractice. And so I'm not sure how else to answer it other than, yes, that's all embodied. So it's not written in the statute. We don't have a specific definition. We've deferred here in this state and almost every other state to the professional boards of occupancy, in this case, the Board of Physicians. So that would be where that would all get worked out.
Thank you, Senator, for your comments.
Sure.
Madam Chair, if you and I would continue our discussion. Thank
Senator
you.
may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Chair, with these folks, nurse practitioner, midwife, licensed certified midwife, physician assistant, and other individuals, undefined. Is there any requirement for a collaborative agreement?
Between whom and whom?
Well, between, for instance, a physician assistant and a physician. Would there be a requirement to have a formalized collaborative agreement like we have in other sections of the medical code?
No.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, Senator, I apologize. So again, page 7, line 6, within the scope of the individual's license or certification. So thank you for keeping me on track. So, Madam Chair, one of the big issues that my side of the aisle has is parental notification. Page 7, lines 28 through 32 talks about an acceptable notification to a parent or guardian is a postal receipt that shows an article of mail, and this is not a change. This is current law. Postal receipt that shows an article of mail.
We didn't make any change in
Well,
that.
I understand that. I just want a clarification for the body so they know there is parental notification. It doesn't have to be looked at, but my question is, did the committee talk about the vagueness of prompt mailing and a return receipt requested bearing a postmark to the last known address? Was there any discussion that this is not specified in terms of the time in which prior notification has to be sent to the parent or guardian?
There's the use of the term prompt in so many places in the code that prompt might be reflective of the circumstances and the nature of the issue.
Sure. So there was no discussion.
I don't think that one word.
No.
Yeah, we did, but we've kept it just what the current law says.
My question was there any discussion at the committee level? And the answer is no.
Yeah, well, we decided to leave it the way it is.
So there was discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, on page 10 starts this insurance issues about no deductible it says a deductible co-insurance, co-payment, or any other cost-sharing requirement, and it actually is on the prior page. Abortion coverage care services without. Now, Madam Chair, we had your bill several years ago, and just to remind the body, that we now in Maryland cannot charge for birth control any deductible, co-insurance, co-payment, or any other cost-sharing requirement, correct?
That's right.
That's right. So this is the same.
The idea is to make things like abortion rare.
No, you're making it free.
No. Well, you make it rare by helping people to have contraception.
Well,
you
that
don't
was your
want
old
poor
bill.
people not
No.
to be able to have contraception.
That was your old bill. I'm talking about this bill.
Yeah, okay.
But I was using it as an example that this wording is not new.
That's right.
So my question is, was there any discussion at the committee about making medical care for other diseases like diabetes, cancer, heart attack, heart failure? Was there any other discussion to make those issues without cost?
Obviously, we were dealing with the topic of this bill, and none of those diseases were about this bill.
So the answer is no, it wasn't discussed. Now, I know it's a different bill, but I just want to know if the committee discussed it. It's a good point.
But you know we stick to the subject matter of a given bill at one time.
Okay, so was there any discussion at the committee level about people who don't have insurance? So I evaluated this as three groups of people: Medicaid, insured, and a group of folks who have no insurance. So they don't have the advantage of deductible co-insurance and any other cost sharing.
We don't address other insurance, but those...
No insurance.
No insurance, no.
Okay.
We didn't do anything
All
about
right.
that.
If you're trying to be
They might have
comprehensive.
they might have to go get a loan or do something. I mean, you don't know how many people might need an abortion or be seeking one who are in that category. So it would be almost impossible without a knowledge of the future. You know, we're not clairvoyant to know who would even need it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few days ago, we had the budget amendment to remove the funding of Medicaid abortion from the budget. And I went to great length to talk about mental health. So today, a surgeon or a physician has to certify the number of reasons or the reason that they have selected as the reason that abortion is legal. And 98% of the abortions paid for by Medicaid were mental health of the mother. Since this appears to be a very important issue because of the results that we have from state data, was there any discussion in the committee about adding mental health screening prior to abortion or providing the benefit after abortion?
When we're trying to make abortion more available where it's needed within our state, and especially in the areas that don't have service, we don't want to screw up by putting additional criteria in there such as that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the last comment I have, or question I have for you, again, goes back to the discussion in the committee. We have on this floor discussed numerous times in juvenile justice issues about the fact that young people need time to develop their frontal cortex, that they can't make good decisions. Does this bill have any restriction to the age of the woman having the abortion in it?
No, and in fact, if you think you're worried so much about their frontal lobe, you don't want them to need to be the parent of an even younger person if they aren't trying to be the parent and don't have sufficient supports in order to do so.
My point, Madam Chair, is if they're making decisions without fully understanding the repercussions, I think the bill needs to address
So
that.
we didn't change current law regarding that.
I understand that, but you're expanding the number of providers. This is a great time to ask those difficult questions
Sure.
about mental health. Madam Chair, thank you for your patience.
Okay.
Mr. President, I just have a couple of comments.
On the report, Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I look at the bill, I think there are huge gaps in the information, the data offered. With the chemical abortions increasing dramatically, it's actually decreasing the pressure on abortion clinics to operate in a real time to provide real services. I think the data wasn't developed adequately. I think also a very hard examination of scope of practice, especially with physician assistants. I love my physician assistants at my medical doctor, but I'm not quite sure they're trained up or have sufficient experience to take on some of these second and third trimester issues, and the bill doesn't address it. So these are many of my concerns, and I thank you very much for your patience, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes the Minority Leader on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the report, look, I know this is a difficult subject, and I'm not here pretending there aren't challenges and struggles that people go with, and it's not lost. But again, this debate is not about the establishment of abortion rights. It's about how extreme they are and the current hidden extremities in current law. And if I even looked on the pro-abortion NARAL website, and it was interesting to see that they said, and I quote, "Maryland's law ensures women's access to abortion services and would remain in effect even if Roe versus Wade were overturned." And these have been so established. I've been down here for 15 years. I've never even looked at this portion of law. This law that we're dealing with abortion has not been changed one time since 1991. It's well established, it's well protected down here. I think most people, I wasn't really involved in politics back in 1991, 92 when this happened, but I believe that talking with people, they said the debate was, should we have abortion rights or not? And they were basically told, have abortion rights mostly in the early stage, you'll have parental notification, and you'll have protections to make sure the woman is safe. So if I could ask the floor leader to yield, I just had a couple questions.
Floor leader will yield. Senator may proceed.
I wanted to follow up on the scope of practice. and trying to figure out how that works. Because in education, or in EHE, we deal with scope of practice all the time. That's one of the things, there's turf battles, and we changed law to change scope of practice. So can you walk me through the process of where you're saying the scope of practice already defines, like a nurse practitioner has scope of practice authority today?
Right.
Where is that? Where is that defined?
It's in the health, you're going to look at the health occupation section of the code.
And that gives nurse practitioners currently the authority to practice abortions?
Well, we restricted it blanketly from everybody except from, for a physician. That was in 1991. And we did it not based on medical considerations. We did it as a legislative move to get the bill passed at the time.
Right, and I think that's Health Article 2208 and 209. That's a prohibition. It just says only physicians can do it. But what I'm saying, I heard earlier in the testimony, you said nurse practitioners already have that within their scope of practice. Where is that defined?
It is within their scope of practice, and in fact, they are managing miscarriages. They are managing pregnancies from as early as the pregnancy is recognized through delivery and are doing deliveries.
Okay.
They're doing it. It's within their scope of practice. We just legislatively carved out.
Okay, I'll try one more time and then I'll let it go. I'm just looking for, and maybe legal counsel could help on this. Where is it defined in law that a nurse practitioner can perform abortions?
Would you yield?
Yeah, I'll yield to Vice Chair.
Just to be clear, so in the health occupations article, we have regulations, and it references, it doesn't specify, when we talk about the scope of practice, it does not specify specific procedures. What is referred there is the scope of your competence, and that competence would be a totality of fact and circumstances based on training, et cetera. So you have to go back to the health occupations article, I think you're familiar with. There are regulations promulgated. It references scope of practice, but it does not delineate specific procedures. What it's referring to in the regulation is core competence, and that is what you're bound by. And if you deviate from that, as I said earlier to the gentleman from District 33, you are subject to sanctions, penalties, fines, and all kinds of other problems. So it's not. So if you're looking for abortion within the scope of practice, that is not delineated or that granular. That's not the way it's written.
So you're saying the ability for a nurse practitioner to perform abortions is in regulation and it's a competency, but doesn't lay out specifically abortion.
Right. So if you look at the definition here, even within the bill, I mean, we specifically say, and it was referenced earlier in terms of a qualified provider, we're talking about within the scope of the individual's license or certification, and then we reference, scope of practice language, and then that references back to the regulation. So yes, I think that you've nailed it. It's about certification, it's about competency, it's about training, and that's all embodied. And ultimately, you're governed by the board that regulates your particular health practice, whether it's nurse practitioner, et cetera, all the way to a physician. As I said earlier, and I should say one other thing, Mr. President, if I could add. In all the years I've been down here in these scope of practice issues, almost always when there's something that doctors alone are doing and there's an attempt to bring some other health practitioner into the doc space, they're almost always opposed. I think this is a singular example. I can't remember another one where the doctors were like, not only are we not opposed with that, we strongly support this bill. It's singular, probably maybe in the last 30 years, something like that. So they were not just not opposed or neutral. They strongly, fully support this bill, expanding what's limited to them to all these other folks that we're providing for in the bill to do these procedures.
So it's interesting you said they support, they come down and so forth. And that's what I'm used to on education, health, environmental affairs. We deal with scope of practice all the time. We determine that here in the General Assembly. We don't give it to the regulations and say, you go figure out what your scope of practice is. It's always this group is trying to come into this group's area, and we have debate and both sides come down and say, we want to get more into your practice. No, we want to get more into your. We make those decisions, and we don't say, what, let's just let the regulations and COMAR decide it. And so what you're saying is, in a major shift of policy, we're going to let regulations determine it and not bring it into the General Assembly to determine the scope of practice and whether they're able to do it for the safety of the women. This bill has expanded it to many different groups, and there's been really no debate even in EHE, where normally scope of practice is determined. So I guess the question is, why was this not brought to EHE to talk about scope of practice, which is the major issue in this bill?
Okay, so we deal with healthcare policy. This is healthcare. I'm not into the business of the I'm not on EHE, so I don't know what the Board of Surveyors, scope of practice issues entail. In this case, I think, I can only speak to the health occupations article specified in this bill. When we come to these particular fields, it's left to the occupational boards, and that's the way I believe we do it in most of the healthcare space. So I can't speak to some of the folks outside of the healthcare space that may come to EHE. That's the way this body of law works, and that's where you're going to have to look to get more information. So it's not specified granularly, as I mentioned.
We can talk more about that later, but I'll go back to the floor leader for some questions. So I was looking, I believe they referenced page 7 for a qualified provider. And it basically says if you're certified, licensed, and it's in your scope of practice, you can practice.
That's correct.
So once we sign this bill and goes into law, day one, a nurse practitioner can start performing abortions.
I'm sure the occupational boards that are applicable will meet and pass something and determine who is and who is not.
You're hoping they do that?
Of course they will.
Is it anywhere in the bill? I mean, the bill basically says...
The bill doesn't tell any occupational board what to put on their agenda on a given day.
Right.
But if we pass something that has been denied to people who within their scope of practice and their competency and their training haven't been allowed to do something for what was a legislative reason for we put into the law, they couldn't. It wasn't taken away by the board, and so there's no reason to assume the board's got a problem.
So if I'm looking at this bill on page 6 at the bottom, it starts talking about a qualified provider, and it lists all the people that can do it, and it says you must be licensed, certified, or otherwise authorized for whom the performance of an abortion is within their scope of practice. And then it goes on and says these qualified providers can perform abortions. The debate today has already said it's within their scope, they're already licensed, they can perform an abortion. So there is nothing in this bill that requires it to adopt new regulations, so they can, day one, after this bill is passed and signed into law, they can go out, authorized by this bill, to go perform abortions. Was that the intent of this legislation?
The bill isn't determining who is competent to do it. The occupational boards are quite competent to determine who has the training and the competency to do what that board is governing.
Okay, we'll leave it there. But for you, we're expanding a lot of healthcare workers into existing abortion procedures.
Well, we are simply removing what was a legislative removal. It wasn't, they were never removed from anything by the boards or by anybody who is medical competency at all.
Right, so this bill expands it to several different healthcare worker groups. What, under current law that would apply to them as well, is the latest a woman in Maryland could have an abortion?
As far as I know, and I don't guess you know either, that they've got some date or some number of days. If it were the case, I guess it would apply even to a physician. But it isn't the case, and you and I both know that.
Do we know how long they could? It's a real simple question. Under current law, how long can a woman go in her pregnancy to have an abortion? I mean, can it go up to 40 weeks and still have a late-term abortion?
I guess that you and God could determine that. I've never seen anything anywhere with some specific term.
Does the law permit that?
Well, there are people that have to have them to save their lives when they're very late.
Okay. So the question, so you would agree under current law that would be expanded to these healthcare workers, they could perform an abortion up to 40 weeks of
I'm
pregnancy.
not agreeing to anything that's an arbitrary number that you pull out of the air when it's not connected to anything. And I'm not a health occupation specialist, and neither are you.
Okay, well, I do have an AG's letter that says it
Okay.
can go up to 40 weeks, so I'm not pulling it out of the air.
Okay.
So currently, they can go up to 40 weeks for late term. So also we hear these terrible stories of rape and incest and life-threatening that would allow a late-term abortion. Is that the only reason a woman in Maryland can have a late-term abortion? Are those serious, really troubling cases?
I would just turn the question back to you. You probably know more about who can have one when, given the questions you're asking, than I do.
I'm actually surprised because this is abortion care access that we're giving to other healthcare workers, and I would hope at a minimum the committee would have at least asked these questions.
It is already within the scope of practice of people that they are allowing to manage pregnancies from as close to conception as the pregnancy is recognized and known about through delivery.
Okay. So, Mr. President, what I've researched is basically the way Maryland law currently exists. Any woman in Maryland could basically have a late-term abortion up to 40 weeks simply because of a health issue. It could be depression, postpartum anticipation. So that's what we have on the books.
Well, that isn't in this
Senator,
bill
Senator,
at all.
Senator, Madam Floor Leader, the senator's speaking on the report. He's on the.
That's what we currently have in law, and we're expanding it to nurse practitioners that they can perform abortions up to 40 weeks. And I hope it's an oversight.
You do know that's not in the bill.
Senator, please, if we could, the senator has the floor. I think that he doesn't have questions at the moment, Senator. I think there'll be others with questions in just a moment.
And I truly hope it's an oversight in our existing law, because it really troubles me. And I was thinking about putting an amendment out this. I don't think I'm going to put it out. But a woman could abort a Down syndrome baby at 30, 40 weeks solely because they say of health issue that they don't want them. It's going to affect their depression or something. We cannot have such extreme laws on the book. Most people out in Maryland think this is for early term, this is safe, it's notifying the parents. But when you look at the actual law, which I did this year for the very first time, this is an extreme law on the books, and that's why we have so many from other states coming here for late-term abortions. Now, I'll shift topics to notification, because I saw under the bill, it says physicians may not perform an abortion unless first it gives notice to a parent. I think that's a good idea. It sounds good. But as my colleague from District 33 brought up, what does the law actually say would satisfy that first notifying the parent? It says you have to send them a certified mail. So you can get this. You got a 12 or 13-year-old daughter, and the physician says, you know what, I got to notify you first. Specifically in the law, it says, you know what will satisfy that? If you get first a certified mail, put it in the mail, send it off, have the abortion, and you get a letter in the mail and say, you know what, your 12 or 13-year-old daughter had an abortion. These are the kind of things that are woven into our existing law that the public doesn't know. And then it goes further, and it says, you know what, because you hear that we have notification of parents when a minor gets an abortion. It says accept. And it says, you know, if you don't live with your parent, I get that one. But then it says, unless the professional physician determines that the minor is mature. You look like a really mature 12-year-old. You're a real mature 13-year-old. Don't got to tell the parents. That's in the law. Or if they say, I think it's in your best interest not to tell your parents. Basically, you're not going to get any certified mail, I guarantee it. What's going to happen is The abortion provider is going to say either you're mature or it's in your best interest, we don't want you to have it. And those are the kind of exceptions that most Marylanders don't know about. And then I looked at the age. Some people can say, hey there, some people can say, you know, I understand 16, 17-year-olds, you know, maybe they don't want to involve their parents. But if I've got a 12 or 13-year-old daughter seeking an abortion, and the abortion provider says, you don't have to tell your parents, I think you're mature, or I don't think it's in the best interest. I think there's something wrong with that. And then you know what goes on after that? You have liability. Well, what if this physician said that that person is 12 years old, and I can show conclusively that they aren't mature? I can take it to the courts, and I can say, there is no way this girl is mature. And everybody, 9 out of 10 people would agree with me. You know what they did in our current abortion laws? They said, we can't go after the physician. There's immunity in here. They say you can't go after them civilly. You can't go after them criminally for their decisions that they made. My daughter could be traumatized because a physician, or now a nurse practitioner, says, you know what, I think your daughter's mature, let's give you an abortion. We could prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were wrong, and our current abortion laws are so extreme that we could not take them to court civilly or criminally. There are so many things wrong with this abortion law that the public just doesn't know about. Everybody thinks, oh, you're going to notify your parents. Well, no way. There's a truck could drive through the loopholes in here. They talk about, oh, they're going to be liable. No, we provide them immunity. Oh, it's just during the first trimester. No, basically any woman could say, I have a health issue, I'm going to have a late-term abortion, and that's legal in Maryland. And then on top of that, you're using all these taxpayer dollars that is morally reprehensible to many people in Maryland, and this bill is forcing, and our laws are forcing people to do that. People don't want their taxpayer money used. They don't want late-term abortions. They don't want you saying that a Down syndrome person, just because they have a genetic defect, which is part of the law, they say after up to 40 weeks, if you have a genetic defect, such as Down syndrome, you could abort that baby simply on that reason alone. Those are the extreme things in our Maryland law. It's not this just as we have abortion rights. And this bill is even taking it further and letting other healthcare workers perform those things. And if I'll just ask one more question on the floor leader, and then I'll sit down. As far as the other states, you said there was 14 other states that do this. How many other states set up a training program like this in the bill?
I'm not an expert on how they do training in other states.
Okay, I actually listened to Budget and Tax, and I believe Finance Council went up there, and they said twice this would be the first in the United States that anything like this, where the taxpayer dollars would be used through the department. And I went back and I looked at the testimony, and right here in DC, they were put in a similar situation, not with the training, but a similar situation, and they testified all the problems they were having. Did the committee take that into impact of how?
What is the it?
That they were having troubles with nurse practitioners and others, that they expanded it to, that they were having problems with the services they were providing.
Have a citation that we could.
It was in your committee hearing and testimony.
We didn't have any testimony of anything like that. That's why I'm asking if you have a citation about what happened in other states.
Yeah, I mean, I will happy to share your committee testimony with you that I printed out after this. But what they were saying, like Washington MedStar Hospital, they said it was getting so bad that they were reporting.
Who said?
It was, I will get you the testimony. So we can do that after. But did the committee take any consideration the health risk to the parent or the woman by expanding this to other people, other health group workers?
We are simply allowing the people that are already within their scope of practice and have the licensure and would be so recognized by their occupational boards to do what they do elsewhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes the Majority Leader, followed by the Senator from District 35.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to just kind of give an answer back to the minority leader, if you might. I'm looking at the other side of the story that you just presented. I wish that we lived in the perfect world where a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old could go to their parents and tell them that they were pregnant, they were in trouble. But unfortunately, that's not the case. We have children who go to their parents and their parents find out about their pregnancy and they beat them up and do all kinds of horrible things to them. That's the other side of the argument, and that's the main reason why I support the whole abortion issue. There are so many different situations, and I would never want to put a child in the position of having to go to their parents and be abused by them because they're in this situation. So I wish that we all had perfect parents like all of us in this chamber should be, but alas, that is just not the situation that we have anywhere, not only just Maryland. And so for the sake of the young people that find themselves in this situation, and for even, I mean, anybody that finds themselves in an abortion situation, it is absolutely that person's choice. I have never been a pro-abortion person, but I am absolutely the person that would fight to the death for my choice, for my own body, to do what I need to do.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 35th District.
Thank
On the
you.
report.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's been a lot of discussion. We've heard the term scope of practice an awful lot this morning in the debate. And it does appear this bill changes a lot of scope of work for many health professionals. The Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee normally handles the complex issues related to scope of practice. I've had the opportunity to serve on that committee now. This is my 4th year, and we've heard issues ranging from eye doctors, podiatry, just this year dry needling, about pharmacists, dentistry, just to name a few. I noticed the cross-file of this bill was heard in the Health and Government Operations Committee in the House of Delegates. And if not a scope of practice issue, at the very least, it is a major, major policy change. And, you know, I feel like the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, you know, I realize Finance and Budget and Tax have weighed in on this, but the committee that deals with health issues has not had a chance to review and weigh in on this. So, Mr. President, I would like to move that we refer this to the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee for their look over this, because it deals with all these complex issues, and ask for a roll call.
All right, Senator has moved to recommit the bill to the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Can we ring the bells, Madam Secretary? Let's hear from the floor leader. Presume the floor leader objects.
I do.
Floor leader objects. All right. Question before the body. Shall we recommit the bill to committee?
Mr. President, while we're waiting for the bells, can I just take the opportunity to
On the motion?
Yes, related to the motion and the comment. Just to be clear, the suggestion that the Senate Finance Committee did not take into account or consider the health of the woman in making the decision. I mean, the reality is, as I mentioned earlier, as the folks come to the chamber, the reason every single medical group in the entire state of Maryland, national and statewide, supported the bill was because this, in fact, was taken into account, and they thought that, in fact, it would not have any adverse impact on women's health. So I make that point, and I'll sit down now that we're fully populated here in the chamber. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator. All right. On the motion, Chair recognizes Senator from the 37th District.
Thank you very much. I'm not convinced that the boards have weighed in on this. I know I checked with some, and the response I got was this is very controversial, and it does create a conflict for a lot of people. So I'd support this amendment to go over to EE. Thank you.
All right. Question before the body is, shall we re-refer? Are we ready for the question? Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th District.
Yeah, Mr. President, I support the motion because there's just been repeated statements about all these medical institutions that have supported the bill, and I've gone through all of the written testimony, and I can't find a single one. And so that troubles me that, you know, if we just hear the testimony, but then we don't get the we don't get the benefit of that to consider on the floor, I find that troublesome. I think it ought to go back and reconsider that. Thank you.
All right. We ready for the question? So the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, Senator's motion fails. Chair recognizes the Senator from the 42nd District.
Thank you,
On the
Mr.
report.
Yes, Mr. President. Could I ask some questions of the floor leader?
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So there's been a lot of discussion of scope of practice this morning, and I've gone back into COMAR, and I've found the section of COMAR which deals with the scope of practice of nurse practitioners, of midwives, nurse midwives. And in section 10, section 10.64.03, it's entitled Scope of Practice Prohibitions, and part 2 says, this is prohibited, surgical delivery or any surgery except an emergency episiotomy. So would you agree with me that as things stand right now, midwives are not permitted to perform surgical abortions? That's not within their scope of practice.
According to the Board of Physicians, abortion is not surgery.
I was talking about surgical abortions, abortions which have complications and involve surgery.
Abortions are considered procedures and not surgery. I'm just saying technically, so we need to use language that's appropriate.
Okay. Well, let me go on. Right now, I assume that midwives have medical malpractice insurance, just as licensed physicians have medical malpractice insurance. Is that correct?
I assume they do, yes.
Okay. And are you aware of whether the medical malpractice insurance issued to the midwives would protect them if they were to engage in abortions as the law stands right now?
They do in 14 other states already, and they are protected.
I was asking about Maryland.
Well, in Maryland, because right now they can't do abortions, there isn't an answer to give you.
So do you know whether or not if they are authorized by law to perform abortions, the medical malpractice insurance that they have to protect them would protect them from engaging in abortions?
It might be expanded to reflect that they are now going to be able to operate more fully within their scope of practice.
Okay, and did the committee do any investigation to see how much more such expanded insurance would cost?
No, and who would know? When you don't have something that you were asking about how would it be insured, it's got to come online to determine how the insurers will set the rates.
Well, since midwives currently are not permitted to engage in surgery or surgical procedures, if an abortion should develop problems and surgery should be essential, wouldn't it be fair to say that the midwife would want to make sure that he or she has malpractice insurance that would cover?
Well, the midwife won't do, if surgery became necessary, you're going to have a referral, as you would with anything else.
In the middle of an abortion, you do a referral?
Birth is actually more dangerous than most abortions are.
Well, but I'm talking about abortions here. So go with my hypothetical. The midwife starts to perform an abortion. Things happen, and the midwife has to do procedures which constitute surgery as a part of what's going on with the woman's body who the midwife is operating on.
Well, it's hypothetical right now that they would ever do what you're calling surgery. And I'm sure that the occupational boards will decide, given whatever procedures the various practitioners might in individual cases have to perform, what to call them. I think it's premature for us to stand on the floor here and decide what might happen and what it would be called by an occupational board.
I understand. But if we pass this law, the midwives will be permitted to perform abortions, which they are not currently, correct?
If a doctor had a problem, he started out just to deliver a baby. If he had a problem or there were some unusual complication and an additional procedure needed to be provided to save the life of the mother or for something unforeseen, their insurance would, yeah, they you know.
Is it fair to say that we do not know, sitting or standing here today, that a midwife would be able to obtain medical malpractice insurance, which would cover the midwife if the midwife engaged in a surgical procedure as a part of an abortion operation?
Madam, the floor leader
just a quick, the floor leader has the floor. Does the floor leader wish to yield?
Yeah,
to
I
Senator?
have it for a point of information.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ed.
Senator, proceed.
It's my understanding, Mr. President, that I'm seeing in the uncodified language that actually, as a prior to this being fully enacted, that the it's on page, what is this, so that you can, for your reference, page 12 of the documents, uncodified, that the Maryland Health Exchange is going to do some consultation, it's going to convene a work group, and also about a year from now, a little less than a year from now, January 1st, the Health Exchange and the Maryland Insurance Administration is going to collect data and look at regulated plans and all of that. And so it looks like, Mr. President, that there's going to be, it looks at least a couple of years of research and build up of the program regarding insurance. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was very interesting, but I'm not sure it answered my question, which is that the question was, do we have any assurance that the insurance companies that issue medical malpractice insurance will be willing to cover midwives who are not licensed as physicians who are now going to engage in procedures which may require surgery?
They are covered now for the procedures that they're doing, and that's what insurers do. They'll manage the risks that they have at the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Chair recognizes Minority Whip on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just as we've discussed, it's been very interesting here. We've spent a little bit of time questioning this bill, a lot of major concerns, and I just want to recap for the benefit of the body and discuss and talk about the report and why I do not support this bill. So this bill, let's just be very clear about what this bill is. It doesn't change the legality of abortion in any way. In Maryland, you can receive an abortion all the way through the end of your pregnancy. We allow for abortion at any stage, and it includes taxpayer-funded abortion for Medicaid. This bill represents a major change in health care policy that I believe, and many of my colleagues believe, risks the health and safety of Maryland's women. We're expanding the ability of lots of different healthcare occupations to perform abortions, and including in that the ability to perform abortions later in terms of pregnancy that quite often can lead to the need for surgical activity to be done. In the case of a difficult later term abortion, there could be a lot of risk involved, especially if someone's not a specialist in understanding other types of things you have to do related to surgery in pregnancy. Maryland already has one of the most liberal laws regarding terminating pregnancies in the entire country. And this bill pushes that even further to the extreme. So a couple of things have come up in the discussion that I'd like to just try to put a bow on. One is that MedChi took no position on this bill. So we've heard about the health occupations all supported this. Well, of course, the ones that get expanded scope of practice in this bill, I'm not surprised that they supported it. But MedChi took no position, so let's be clear about that. And yes, normally they come in opposed. Doctors come in quite often opposed to expanding scope of practice in other areas, and this time they took no position. we know this issue is a highly politicized, highly charged issue, so it's not surprising that they would take no position, but they did not support the bill. Number two, current law, we had a question raised about why the discussion about parental notification, the issues with a young girl, a young woman who is seeking an abortion and could be under danger. And I think that's a very credible and understandable point of view. But current law, I think the minority leader was speaking about there's some big loopholes that really parental notification, if a doctor at this point says they're mature enough, they can waive the notification. Getting rid of that would not affect the situation that was brought up on the floor, which again, as I say, I have great respect for bringing the issue up of a child, a young person that is under duress or could be abused, but there's already in current statute, says that notice to parent can be waived if it would lead to physical or emotional abuse, or may lead to physical or emotional abuse. So that's already in the law and covered. We're talking about the other exceptions where a doctor can judge a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old to be mature enough to consent to an abortion without parental notification. And we've spent a lot of time on this Senate floor talking about when people's brains develop and when they can be prosecuted for crimes and when they can seek mental health counseling. So we've spent a lot of time talking about that. I think we should be tightening up those notification laws no matter what we do with this bill. The last thing I'll talk about as far as a counterpoint on some of the things I've heard here today is that the discussion about access and how all these Maryland counties don't have an abortion provider. National Organization of Women came out with a report in 2018, and in that report it said 81% of Maryland women had access to at least one abortion provider in their county. Now, you could argue it should be 100%, or you could argue, well, it's not an abortion-dedicated provider in that county, but that's the information that I have. I think there's nothing stopping any doctor or any medical provider that has a physician leading it from setting up an abortion provider anywhere in our state. There's no law against it. So, again, we're talking about we don't need to dramatically expand what appears to me to be, we're expanding the scope. We can say whatever we want on the floor. It's expanding the scope of practice because we're dictating to the health boards, you will allow this. No matter whether, you will allow this. We may say consistent with their scope of practice, but it'll be like the legislature's intent with this bill is that physician's assistants, midwives, nurse midwives, nurse practitioners all can perform abortions. And as we've said here, if this bill were to stay the way it is at any stage. So this is a radical bill. This is a radical bill in a state that already is very, very far to the liberal side, the progressive side on abortion. So I think that's really important, Mr. President. I think we should actually, I'd like to move that we have a vote on second reader here on this bill before we move ahead. And I would urge the body to reject this bill. There's a way to deal with access to care. There's a way to deal with access to care that does not just focus on this one narrow issue, but says, hey, we need more nurses. We need more healthcare access all across our state in a lot of areas. This is not the right way to do it. So I would ask the body to join me in rejecting this bill.
All right. We will do a roll call vote on the favorable report. Let's go to the senator from the 34th district on the report.
Thanks, President. Colleagues, as a member of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, we've been kind of busy, so I haven't really focused on this bill. So I've been listening really intently to all of this, and I took the time to go back and read the committee reports. But just a couple points here, just two brief ones that really strike me in this. The statement was made that abortion providers are not readily accessible throughout the state. Well, it's also not readily accessible throughout this state? Full-service emergency hospitals. They're not readily accessible. Look, my county's just out really close to Baltimore City, but even we end up going into you got University of Maryland Shock Trauma, Hopkins, and other fantastic medical institutions in the city. So even from my county, which isn't that far outside, we've got a hospital, a lot of our surgery goes downtown. So it sort of makes sense that when you think about it, that given the potential for things to go wrong at abortion at any stage, that the majority of those clinics would be located adjacent to a full-service emergency medical hospital. But if we're going to take radical action and fund and issue state funding to expand medical services, I would strongly suggest that we put that money towards our emergency medical services and expanding those. The second is it's been made, the point's been made a number of times, actually by the chairwoman herself, that we've got this unexplained number of African American deliveries that are high risk. They're preemie, they're high risk, and that bothered me because I thought, why would that be? That doesn't make any sense. But then I looking through these reports, and the Institute of Medicine has listed induced abortion as an immutable risk factor for preterm birth. So if you've had abortions or an abortion, you are now subject to an elevated risk for premature birth. In fact, it's twice the term, twice. It elevates it by twice the risk for those who have had preterm births. And it's interesting that the African American population already has a 3 to 4 time higher rate for abortion and a 2 higher rate for preterm births. So I think there's a strong medical correlation here between access to abortion and preterm births and successful pregnancies that would require emergency medical intervention. I think that's something that we ought to be thinking about as we move forward, that this is not simply, as we look at this bill, it's really not just simply a matter of convenience and ready accessibility. There is this strong overlying issue of the health of the mother. And to me, this bill it seriously compromises health and health care for immediate convenience. And an abortion, pregnancies aren't something that sneaks up on you like other emergency medical services do. You do have time to plan and travel an hour, go to another county, and it just seems like this is a gross misallocation of this body's, of the state resources towards one medical procedure while ignoring the obvious deficiencies in many others. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair, let's hear from senators who have not yet spoken. Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County on the report.
On the report, thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to address some of the issues that have been raised here this afternoon, and why we need to do this after 30 years. And wasn't this settled law, and isn't it settled law, and aren't we here in Maryland at a place where we can ensure that people have access to abortion? And I want to talk about it a little bit in the context of what's happening around the country first, and then second, some real life experiences about why it is so important that after 30 years we expand access to this very important healthcare procedure. As we all know, in June, and I'm just going to place this a little bit in sort of the national context of what's happening around this country right now. And in June, the Supreme Court is expected to make a really important decision in a case called Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. And this is about a Mississippi abortion restriction, but it's really intended to affect the entire country. And the Attorney General in Mississippi has asked the Supreme Court to use this case to overturn Roe versus Wade. Now, all the legal predictions are that the Supreme Court will damage or even overturn Roe, which means that a woman's right to make decisions about her own medical care will be left to the states. And if the court doesn't overturn Roe, there are at least 24 cases behind it that have the express purpose to do that. We are expecting 26 states to either ban or severely limit abortion rights as soon as the Supreme Court acts. And because state legislatures have already passed laws to trigger those bans, or because they will be shortly forthcoming after the Supreme Court, we can expect that people will go to places where they can more readily get this really important healthcare procedure. In 2021, more United States abortion restrictions were enacted in any year since Roe was decided in 1973. And that is continuing in 2022. We have already had a very sobering view of what life will be like for millions of women if the Supreme Court acts as we expect. And when Texas enacted Senate Bill 8, which bans abortions after 6 weeks, Texas women who had the means to travel to get care sought abortion services in other states. And in the month following SB 8 going into effect, wait times for in-state and out-of-state patients rose to as many as 23 days. And just imagine what it would be like if those 26 states that already are enacting those more restrictive laws eliminate the access. And I want to share with you 2 stories about why this is very important and why it's really important here in Maryland. The first is something that happened a couple of months ago in my district. I got a call from an OBGYN who'd had a practice for more than 20 years in Owings Mills. And it was a stable practice. His lease was up. And his landlord, I happen to know who the landlord is, and I would bet, I haven't confirmed this, but I would bet his landlord is supportive of reproductive rights, the fullest array of them, decided not to renew his lease. And why did he decide not to renew his lease? Is because he offered first-term abortions as part of his practice. And so this doctor that had been providing the fullest array of healthcare services to people who needed him had to go out hunting for a new place to settle his practice. And the landlord even said, we'll go out and we'll try and help you find a new place for your office. It took months and months and months. And I called the Attorney General's office and I said, is this legal? And they said, yes, it's legal. The landlord can rent to whomever he wants to rent to in this kind of case. And he eventually found another place, it just so happens in another part of my district, but also, and he had to start his new practice. And I thought, this is in Maryland. This is for people who need healthcare, reproductive services, and because it was so difficult for him, it's just difficult to provide these services. So we need more people who are able safely to provide the kind of services that this bill provides. The second instance I want to talk to you about is a woman who I met, who I talked to over the phone, who was introduced to me because she so deeply cares about this issue. Not an issue she'd been that involved with until it affected her personally. She is a PhD biomedical engineer. Her name is Layla. She's from Montgomery County. And she has a very, very sobering personal experience that just resonated with me. And she started the conversation by saying she has the fullest resources available to her. She has the highest levels of education. She is a PhD in biomedical engineering. She deals in neurology, so she knows about brains and how they work, and she knows works for a company and is involved in neurology, so she's very highly educated. She has resources. She is married. She is supported. She and her husband wanted to have a child. She got pregnant. She was 8 weeks pregnant, and she had a terrible, terrible severe headache and nausea and fatigue, and she had migraines, and she went to, she thought something seriously wrong is going on, and she got an emergency appointment at her ophthalmologist, and she vomited 20 times between getting image sequences. She lost consciousness briefly, and she found out that what was happening to her personally was happening because she was pregnant, and that she was having a stroke in her optic nerve. And if she didn't get care quickly, something very dramatic was going to happen. And she said, I want to terminate my pregnancy. I want to be able to preserve my vision. And the doctor was very reluctant to provide her the services that she was clearly wanted and was trying to get. It was a long story, but she ended up being able to get an abortion. And thank God she did, because it turned out she had something much more serious going on, and it was millimeters from her brain, and she could have died if she hadn't gotten that care as quickly as she did. So when we're talking about, what's the difference if it takes a few more hours, if it takes a few more days to get to a different part of the state when services are already backed up? In this instance, it literally meant this person's life. Unfortunately, even after she chose to terminate her pregnancy, she lost her vision. And I just found that out yesterday. And This is somebody who is young, who was healthy, and who, through each step of the way, had to advocate for herself to get the kind of health care she needed. Thankfully, she did not lose her life. She lost her vision, and I'm so sorry for that. But I just want to read her words. And she said, what her experience taught her is that even in Maryland, nobody should feel insecure in their ability to obtain an abortion, even in a life-threatening situation. And it's critical that abortion access be expanded and destigmatized. And those were her reasons for supporting this very, very important bill. And I can't say it any better than she did. Thank you.
All right, on the report, are we ready for the question? Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District on the report.
I have an amendment on the bill. Is it
We have to
time?
take up the report,
Oh,
Senator.
Thank you.
Sorry. All right, could we ring the bells, please? Question before the body is on the favorable report as amended. Favorable report as amended. If we are ready, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County to explain his vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and colleagues. I know that when we discuss topics like this, it brings up a lot of passion and some philosophical disagreements, but this body is often about good conversation. It's often about getting feelings out and getting issues out on the table and discussing them. But ultimately, it's about not only what's happening in the state of Maryland, but across the country. And this is the right bill for the right moment, where we make sure that people have access to family planning, people have access to reproductive health care, and this is the right step for the state of Maryland. Thank you, and that's why I'm supporting this legislation.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senators wish to explain their vote? Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District has 2 minutes to explain her vote.
Thank you very much. There's been a lot of discussion on this, and I just rise to support my red vote. I just truly believe this is overreaching. It's going to be abortion on demand. I think we have a lot of providers who are not providing service because the high cost of malpractice insurance. We have a shortage of healthcare professionals in all aspects of the health delivery system right now. I heard a big discussion just yesterday about how many private providers are going into concierge care. And that's why the proliferation of so many other middle-level providers. I also believe it's important that we provide safe care, and we have provided safe care to date with what has already been on the books with regard to abortion services availability. So I would say that those services are already available. When I called back to my practitioners, they said, what's the problem? I'm not sure we have a clearly defined problem, and therefore I'm voting red. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right. If there's no further explanations of vote, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the affirmative, the favorable report as amended is adopted. There are amendments, I presume. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District has an amendment. Give
Thank
us
you very much.
Just a moment to
I
collect.
have an amendment, and that is 683421. Thank you.
Right.
As you've heard me talk before.
Oh, sorry, give us just one moment. Let's get it up on the.
Oh, excuse me.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much. There's been a lot of discussion today about scope of practice, and I really don't believe it is in many of the practice acts. We need to go back and take a look at that, because I've been down this road before with advanced practice nursing, at least. But I'm concerned about safe care. You've heard a lot about safety. And I've also had the experience of accompanying young women who had severe psychosis to have abortions. And the way they were treated was absolutely unconscionable. So this amendment would simply ask the department in consultation with the appropriate health occupation boards to develop a clear standard of care. And I want to make sure that that standard of care includes the highest standard, the highest practice possible, because our moms and our babies, our infants, wherever they are in the period of gestation and wherever they are in their delivery and follow-up, this is a very vulnerable time. One of the things I learned in working with vulnerable populations through the pandemic is that healthcare is very personal. Getting a vaccine is very personal. Well, let me tell you, having an abortion is very personal, and any of the complications associated with that. So I want to make sure that there is a high standard of care, that women are completely informed about what they're getting into, what are the implications, what are the complications, and then I want to make sure that that is a safe experience and that there is follow-up, so that we've received lots of follow-up calls when we are determined to be negative with our COVID test, or even positive with our test, or getting the results. I think there needs to be a way to continue to support that woman through that experience so that she's not treated disrespectfully. And I think it needs to be culturally competent and including language appropriate to that individual's language. So I would move the amendment.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Everything you want already exists. You're absolutely right. We need all those things, and it's in place right now, so there's no need to add it. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment.
So it might be a friendly amendment if we're just making sure it's emphasized.
All right, question is on the amendment. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye.
Roll call.
Senator has requested a roll call. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Further amendments? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This amendment removes from the bill those additional medical professions of physician's assistant, midwife, and the other three. There's 4 identified and 1 unidentified other medical practitioners. Mr. President, I don't see the data that says there's a shortage. I don't see the information coming to us that says there's a huge backlog where women cannot get services. This amendment focuses $3.5 million on the training of additional physicians who've been trained in surgery, in all of the complex processes of the human body. I think the other medical professions listed in the bill are very fine groups of people. Thank the senator from Baltimore County to point out that scope of practice for midwives, and I think this is an issue with all the others, and would request a favorable report on the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Yes, in fact, Maryland has lost providers in recent years, and we're down to, let's see, we had 57 and we're down to 42 providers for the entire state, and we need the help that we can get. So I would resist the amendment.
All right, Senator resists the amendment. On the amendment, Chair, let's see if there are any senators who have not yet spoken on the amendment that wish to speak. If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Roll call, Mr. President.
Yes, senators request a roll call on the amendment. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from District 4 has an amendment.
Have amendment.
All right. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Unfortunately and sadly, at times, an abortion procedure can result with a child being born alive. In these situations, it is currently legal for the medical practitioners performing an abortion to deny medical care to the infant and leave the baby to die, sometimes over the course of hours or days. This is quite frankly an abhorrent practice that we must end. A baby's right to life and medical care does not and should not change because he or she was born in an abortion clinic instead of a delivery room. Medical practitioners should be legally required to administer medical care to babies no matter where or why they are born. This should be a non-controversial amendment. It simply requires that appropriate medical care be given to any child who survived an abortion attempt and the child be transported and admitted to a hospital.
All right.
I'm still going. Thank you, Mr. President. The mother of the child born alive during an abortion would not be prosecuted under this. This bill comes at a time when Maryland continues to legalize abortion up until birth, which we may recognize increases the likelihood of botched abortions where babies are born alive. Mr. President, currently 38 states have at least some born alive protections. Maryland is sadly one of 14 states that does not. Massachusetts, which is certainly no conservative bastion, has the exact language in this amendment as their law. Another state we frequently make comparisons to on this side of the aisle in a negative connotation, California has in their statute that infants who survive an abortion procedure have the same medical rights as an infant born alive. This is a common sense amendment to protect children. It does not in any way restrict abortion services. Maryland should join the vast majority of states, both on the right and left, who have these protections in place. And I will move the amendment and ask for a roll call.
Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
We should know, colleagues, that the Department of Health in Maryland already has the authority to regulate in this area, and there's nothing else needed.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. President.
Yeah, Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendment.
I'm sorry. Just so we're clear, this is not a gotcha amendment. This is stating very clearly that if a baby is born alive, you have to give life-giving, life-saving care to the child. California does this, so this isn't like a, West Alabama thing. This is really a human rights issue. So I wouldn't want to just leave it at, well, Maryland law just sort of allows you to do whatever you want. This should be in this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, let's hear again from the floor leader.
The Maryland Authority, the Maryland Health Department already has the authority to regulate abortion care differently, to take care of all those kinds of issues, and they are able to do so as long as the regulations are consistent with medical standards, and they are.
All right, on the amendment. Any further discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District on the amendment.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'm sorry, but to say that this issue will be resolved by the bureaucrats in the Maryland Health Department, I'm very troubled by that. This is a major policy decision that belongs squarely on the shoulders of the Maryland General Assembly, and to suggest that some bureaucrats in the health department will make this decision is wrong. Thank you.
All right. Any senators who are not yet spoken? Let's check with the floor leader on the amendment.
For what our colleagues are describing, you're talking about an actual baby born. And when the baby is actually born, nobody's going to do anything to harm a baby that is born. And the health department already indicates it has the authority to handle those situations. It doesn't need anything.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Yeah, I just want to get back to what the amendment actually says, that if you have one of these late-term abortions that unfortunately was described earlier by the minority leader, that these can happen up to nine months of pregnancy. If at that point the baby is delivered and still alive, that the amendment says, in caring for the child, exercise the same degree of care would be provided to any other child of the same gestational age. And if the child is in a non-hospital setting, which they would be in one of these clinics, they immediately be transferred to a hospital. So the current regulations, which were not stated, and I think it would be helpful if the floor leader would state that if there are regulations, because I don't believe there are, dealing with children born alive, but clearly it doesn't cover what I've stated in this law, which is very common sense. And you ask, does this happen? Yes, it happens. There's speakers that go around the country, people that actually survived abortions, and unfortunately, we had up in Philadelphia a couple years ago an abortion doctor who was convicted of murdering three children that were delivered alive, and he murdered. So in this case, he actually murdered them, but what I'm saying is allowed to happen right now in Maryland law. They're being able, if you have a child born alive at one of these clinics, our law is silent on what would happen then. With all due respect, that's infanticide.
All right, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
There is nothing in this bill, and there's nothing that anybody on this floor would do to harm a child that is born alive. And this bill does nothing to harm a child that is born alive. And the health department has the ability to regulate what happens when kids are born alive. And so the bill is not about doing any such thing as that. So you're outside of the scope of the bill is what you're trying to regulate.
All right, on the bill, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the minority whip has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have an amendment that they're distributing.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. During the discussion in our committee, we discussed this issue, and I thought it would be good to bring to the whole body. We've talked a lot about data today and about access and different issues along those lines, and had some debate about that. One of the things is Maryland is one of only, I believe, 4 states that does not collect data on the number of abortions performed and statistics about what's happening with reproductive health and abortion in our state. And so what I wanted to offer was an amendment, something to be sure we're getting good data, because we're being told we have to pass this bill because there's not enough access and there's not going to be enough access in the future, and something could happen in the future that means more people will come here. Well, I asked in the hearing, I actually asked, how do we define, and I use this term extremely loosely, but how would we define success? Is it like number of abortions, or is it how many people are performing abortions, or is it, wait times or whatever? So this amendment simply would include in the bill that the department shall collect the following de-identified, and I want to stress that this is not collecting people's personal information, but de-identified data regarding abortions performed in the state. We'd like to know this would know for each abortion the gestational age of the child or the fetus at the time of the abortion and the type of abortion performed. We said fetus to not offend too many people. The total number of, that's the term in the law, the total number of abortions performed, the racial and economic demographics of the mothers, and on or before July 1st of each year, beginning next year, the department should report to us with that information. So it's just basic data gathering. We have extensive data on things like COVID, things like who has had a vaccine in the state and who hasn't, or who has anyway. We have a lot of information on all sorts of other kind of health outcomes. We thank goodness have a good bit of information about infant mortality and births, which is great. This just seeks to get the same kind of information and data. So I would move the amendment, Mr. President, ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Senators, move the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
First of all, the amendment was put before the committee and it was voted down in the committee. But also, there have been some attempts to collect data, various kinds of statistics on abortion. They're all incomplete. The most complete is something by the Gut Marker Institute, and they think that what they've been able to gather is only about 70% complete. Many people feel, but that's practitioners and persons who have been patients, that it is such private information that people just don't want it shared. They mistrust public information that are trying to list their private medical operations and so on in the data. And so we would suggest that we go with the negative vote that the committee gave, and that the information is not well kept anywhere in the nation, and it's not going to be helpful.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th district.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment.
Senator has an amendment. We will load the amendment. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a simple, friendly amendment. In those cases where a provider is required to provide notice to a parent or guardian before performing an abortion, the delivery is restricted to the parent or guardian, the delivery of the notice is restricted to the parent or guardian, and that the notice is received by the parent or guardian before the date that the abortion was performed. This amendment simply makes notification meaningful and real. It's not just checking the box. Our parents, our guardians, and our minors deserve a notification process that actually works and that would allow parents to be parents. So it's that simple, and I ask that it be accepted as a friendly amendment.
All right, senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
In many cases, parents are notified because the child and the parent have a good relationship and the parent will be involved. In many cases, given the current situation with the mail alone, you wouldn't have timely notice in most cases, and the pregnancy would proceed perhaps beyond a time when it is as safe to even do the procedure. You don't want to do the procedure at a later gestational state, but earlier. And so I would recommend that we vote negative on this amendment.
All right, the senator has urged we reject the amendment. The senator's requested a roll call vote. Are there any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk.
Mr. President.
Oh, yes.
Just explaining my vote.
Yeah, Chair, Senator has 2 minutes to explain his vote.
Thank you. I think this is a good amendment. I think most people in Maryland, when you tell them they have parental notification for a minor, they think you're going to tell them about it. What we have currently in law, and the only thing we have in law that says meets the notification, is if you send certified mail to the parent, that takes off notification. So young children will be getting abortion, parents will get a certified mail a couple days later, and Maryland says that's great.
All right, any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a second amendment and last one.
All right.
And I'd like to spend a little time on this one to explain why I'm offering it. Since we had debate earlier, it was mentioned that there are several exceptions in current law when a qualified abortion provider may perform the abortion without notice to a parent or guardian. And the majority leader mentioned one of them that's very important. It's already in law, that has to do with any mental or physical abuse. These exceptions include that the minor does not live with a parent or guardian, a reasonable effort to give notice is unsuccessful, the notice to the parent or guardian may lead to physical or emotional abuse of the minor, as we discussed before. There's two other ones that are the huge loopholes. The minor is mature and capable of giving informed consent to an abortion, and notification would not be in the best interest of the minor. That would be the provider's opinion. This amendment states that if a minor is under the age of 13, the last two exceptions do not apply, meaning that a provider must notify the parent or guardian if the minor is under 13 and not under the age of 13, and not use the exceptions that a minor is mature and capable of giving informed consent to an abortion, again, under the age of 13, and notification would not be in the best interest of the minor, again, under the age of 13, and this is the exemption that is so broad that it could cover virtually any situation or scenario. Now, this body will recall that we had debate last year in SB 41, which lowered the age of consent from 16 to 12 years old for children in need of mental health services. At that time, many parents, medical experts, and health organizations opposed lowering the age to 12, and they noted that children simply are not able to safely make medical decisions without their parents or guardians. And I want to note that many well-respected medical organizations, like the Maryland Psychological Association and the Maryland Board of Nursing, to name just a couple, agree that most preteens and teenage children do not have the cognitive capacity to make medical decisions without parental involvement, and it is developmentally appropriate, and it is not developmentally appropriate to expect them to do so at the age of 13 and under. Many parents, I'm sure you've heard from them in your own districts across this state, are advocating for policies that strengthen parental involvement and notification. And I'd like to read the testimony of one Maryland mother of 6 children. She has 3 sons and 3 daughters, and she writes, "From the day that I delivered each one, I knew that I would do all that I could to raise, care for, and protect them through to adulthood. At the core of the issue is the question of whether these are my children. At what point is a child an adult, in quotes, capable of making permanent, life-altering medical decisions without notice to their parents?" She goes on and she says, "I have raised 3 of my children past the age of 12, and I can assure you that they are extremely different in their personalities and cognitive abilities. It is frightening to consider this ever being applied to other non-emergency medical treatments, especially one as dangerous or life-altering as abortion." This same mother has been on the other side of the issue, and she writes, "I found myself pregnant in a situation where neither of my parents lived in the state that I resided in. I understand firsthand the thoughts and emotions that run through a young woman's mind when faced with extraordinary circumstances. It was critical that I spoke to an adult who knew my personality, my circumstances, my medical conditions, and all that typically comes with being a parent or guardian. My mother was made aware, and I was able to discuss my options with the person who would ensure that my physical and emotional needs were met. I want to remind you all that parents, not physicians, are responsible for their children before and after they leave the medical facility. She went on to say, I believe in our parents and their ability to appropriately act as guardians and protectors of their children in the family unit. My colleagues and friends, this amendment honors the fundamental rights of parents. And as has already been noted, the appropriate exemptions are already in the law. And we absolutely are going to have that exemption if there's fear of physical or emotional abuse of the minor. And we are only talking about the 2 exemptions for children 13 and under. So my colleagues, I ask you to support this amendment. Thank you.
All right, Senators, move the amendment from the floor leader.
Yes. There are many cases in which the child has a good relationship with the parent is nurturing, and those parents ought to be involved. But there are many situations when the child is a victim of rape or incest, or there's abuse in the home, and in the best interest of the child, the medical professionals will need to use their judgment. We don't want kids coerced one way or the other if they are victims of rape, incest, and abuse, even in the home. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from district, from the minority whip. All right, Senator has an amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, one thing this bill is doing, in addition to all the things we've discussed today, is that it is allocating $3.5 million of taxpayer funds to set up an abortion care clinical training program fund. And in the bill, it is going to allow for the state, it's going to have the state outsource this fund to a coordinating organization, and the coordinating organization shall have demonstrated experience in coordinating abortion training programs at community-based and hospital sites, be a nonprofit, be in good standing with any state or jurisdiction in which the organization is registered, submit an annual report to the department, and meet some other requirements that are established in the bill. I wanted to add in, because this is a pretty unique thing that we're typically, when we've identified a problem, whether it's in healthcare or perhaps workforce or labor, just a couple of weeks ago, we passed a bill, and it was so important that we have paid time off, that we passed a bill that set up a complex organization. We set up a complex and expensive state organization that's going to cost a lot of money, rather than looking at the private sector or outsourcing it. But here we're outsourcing it. We're outsourcing it, $3.5 million a year. I think it's really important, if we're going to do that, that we make sure that we prevent things that are not consistent with our values as a state from organizations that would not be consistent with the values of our state. So my amendment simply says, it would insert in the bill that this organization can have no history of promoting an ideology of eugenics, racism, or ableism in its founding or its history. And I think that is the least we can do to ensure that whatever nonprofit organization we hand $3.5 million a year in perpetuity to is consistent with our values. So, Mr. President, I would move the amendment and ask for a roll call vote.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you. Colleagues, the Senate Finance Committee was presented with this amendment and voted it down. And this is the reason. We need a coordinating organization that will be a state entity that will arrange for this stuff. And if you're worried about what kinds of ideologies the persons on the coordinating committee will have, you wouldn't start with stuff like eugenics and racism and ableism. You would state in the affirmative what you want them to do. I'm not sure who here would be competent to determine who is who has an ideology of eugenics. A lot of us may have racially related ideas that won't necessarily make us a racist. And ableism, I'm not even sure what that is. So what you would want is the state that you would want cultural diversity and respect for the variety of ideologies, religions, and so on of people in Maryland. But this was entertained before the committee, and it was voted negative. So I would ask you to follow suit.
All right, on the amendment, senators who have not yet spoken, Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District.
Mr. President, would the maker amendment yield for a question or two on this?
I'd be happy to.
Senator yields. And if it's on the amendment and the senator already knows the answer,
Well, I hope to
senator can
find
make
it
the
out. I
argument.
hope to find out the
Fair-
answer.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead.
So you were talking about the coordinating organization. Was it brought up in committee? Who would potentially be a coordinating organization?
The committee testimony and the exchanges that I had in committee was silent on exactly which group or what group would qualify for that. There does seem to be some efforts in other states with a one particular organization, but I'm assuming there's more than one. I would hope it's not a sole source bid here. I would assume not. It does have to. I did find out in committee that there will be an RFP process. It's not in the bill, but that the state would have to follow an RFP process for this. But yeah, it's silent about who it is. That's why I just think some guardrails, making sure we don't have groups that are not consistent with our values as a state, promoting things like eugenics, white supremacy. Ableism is, since the question came up, ableism is when you think that maybe disabled people are expendable. So we don't want anybody with a history of that kind of philosophy, getting any taxpayer money in our state to the best of our ability.
My second question would have been about ableism. He already answered that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment,
If I could just say one thing.
are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Since you're saying you don't know who would contract with the coordinating organization, it's the Maryland Department of Health. And so I don't think we really have to worry about them. We rely on that department for a lot of things.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
I have an amendment, Mr. President.
Collect the senator's amendment.
Thank you.
One moment, please. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment requires anyone trained on this capacity to also be trained in offering alternatives to abortion. I want to give a little story about this and why I'm doing this amendment. I had a very good friend who was married, and they both had a serious problem. And the problem is, time after time, they tried to have a child. They tried to have a baby, and they couldn't have one. So what they did, Mr. President, is they tried adoption. And in this state, in this country, it's very hard, and they made it very difficult to adopt. They made it so hard they had to go to another country to adopt a child. And my problem with this bill, Mr. President, is this is not a part, or other options or alternatives that should be a part of this. We have people that have been trying to have children, and they can't. So one way they can do that is by adoption. And realize something. This is a great thing and an opportunity that we can help a family or a husband and a wife become a family. Help them by adopting. Or other alternatives, counseling, or finding other ways or methods that we can help out a young person having a child and making them realize they can make a family and give this family or this husband and wife an opportunity to be a family. Couples are struggling right now. They're having such a hard time to become a family. In this room today, we can be successful. We can do something for mothers and fathers that are out there to try, or husband and wives, they're trying to be a mother and trying to be a father. Hey, let's do something good here, Senate. Let's do something very good. Let's change this, and let's add something good to this. Let a husband and a wife be a mother and a father, and let them have an opportunity to adopt. But at the same time, let's give this young person that is pregnant to have a chance to maybe have some counseling and sit down and talk about this. I think when we do something like this, we're helping them out. We're encouraging them that maybe there's another option. And if we do that, maybe they'll realize the good thing is they completed something great and they had a child. Just think about that, please. Let's give a husband and a wife the opportunity to become a mother and a father. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Yes. Colleagues, the medical providers are required already for all kinds of procedures to discuss the pluses, the minuses, what complications there might be, and all of the things that this amendment suggests. But with regard to counseling people to have a child so that someone else can receive the benefit of the child that they are born with, if that were the thing that you were after, why would the child need to have the medical provider tell them? But what really strikes me is how many children there are already that are wards of the state. And if I wanted to be a parent and I hadn't been able to be one on my own, why not take children that you know are fully here and that need parenting, and to become the parent for that child? You don't need to try to entice a young person who is not fully developed and is trying to make up their minds what to do when they're in a life altering situation, to have somebody try to persuade them to do something in particular. So if you want to help, and I agree, there are many children that need families, and many families need many parents, would-be parents who want a child. And there are many children already in every one of our counties waiting and hoping, and we know they are here, and they would thrive in many cases if some of us would consider adopting them, or some of our other constituent members would. And that's what we really ought to do. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, further discussion. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like a roll call, but we need to realize this is not a part of the bill, and I believe it should be to help that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 27 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the minority whip as an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Just give us one moment. Let's make sure we get the right one up. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I've got an amendment that I think would be a great idea to improve the bill. I spoke earlier about the $3.5 million that we are giving out every year now with this bill. What I think would be best is, rather than having the taxpayers bear that burden, we should do what we do in a lot of cases in health occupations. There should be a way that the health occupations can pay for the training services that should be provided in their health occupations through an assessment, through a fee. So what my amendment would do would simply would strike the $3.5 million allocation of our taxpayer dollars we're putting every year into this, and instead have each qualified provider, as we define in the bill, who performs abortion in the state should pay an abortion provider assessment fee in the amount set by the Department of Regulation. And it should be set to approximate the cost of maintaining the program. Health department shall pay the fee collected under the section to the comptroller. So it's just a common sense, good government. Let's have the industry that we are supercharging in this state help pay for the cost of training. I think that's a really great thing, because I'm going to tell you, $3.5 million a year could go a long way in helping us fill our nursing shortage and fill some of the shortages of some of the other health occupations we have. So if we're not going to do it for that, we ought to have the industry, which makes a tremendous amount of money. We're going to be setting up for these folks to make a lot of money on this. The least we can do is have them pay a fee to help run the training programs. I think it's a good government amendment, Mr. President. I'd ask for a roll call and move the amendment.
Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Mr. President and members, to have the providers pay a fee, access fee, is to ignore the fact that we don't have enough providers in the first place, that we have been losing them in Maryland. And given what is happening nationally, and if Roe v. Wade is overturned, will become an unbearable situation on a nationwide basis. Our own Marylanders won't even be able to be served in a timely manner. So we don't want to drive people away who are professionals that we badly need, because we don't have sufficient numbers now. So this is a bad amendment, and I'd ask you to reject it.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 29 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd has an amendment. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're coming down to the last few amendments. This amendment would remove one of the identified medical practitioners, the physician's assistant. As I said, I guess an hour and a half ago, love my physician's assistants. Not quite sure they're going to have the training and the expertise and the interest to do this type of work. I understand that this is about access, and the attitude is the more people certified, the better. But I just want to make sure you know about a National Organization of Women report in 2018. At that time, 81% of Maryland women have access to at least one abortion provider in their county. 81% have access in their county. The figures that the good chairwoman was using, I believe, apply to only surgical abortion clinics. And as I shared with the body, I am convinced that this abortion pill available through pharmacies and doctors' offices make the need to expand the number of practitioners doesn't justify it, especially at this level of training and experience. Mr. President, would request a favorable report on this amendment.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you. Already, you should know, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists strongly support and use already for physician assistants in the states where it's possible to do so. But our Maryland Academy supports. Also, they are required when a physician assistant is doing any kind of a procedure of this type, that they do so under the supervision of the gynecologist or the obstetrician. So this is not necessary, it's not helpful, and remember, we need providers, we don't have enough. So I would ask you to reject this amendment.
All right, on the amendment, additional discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 29 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment fails. Are there additional amendments to the bill or its title? If not, Senate Bill 890 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, we've got one more. We've got Special Order Calendar 67. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 937, Delegate Kelly, Abortion Care Access Act. Questions on the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, we've gotten the floor report on this one. The question is on the favorable report. This one is subject to amendment on third reader. So on the report, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 937 is hereby passed to third reader. All right, Senators, thank you all. This is tough. This is a tough issue. Look, this is going to be the only time we take up this issue this session. So we've got one more day left tomorrow on Monday. I know there are lots of other possible ideas out there. I think this is the issue that we will take on for this session. So we got to get through Monday, and really appreciate Senators' approach and how things have moved forward and kind of balanced arguments. These are one of these value difference questions that we do the best we can. So let's hear from committees. Chair recognizes the Finance Chair.
We're going to let them go home.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right. Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs.
Mr. President, we have a briefing and then possibly some voting. We'll meet in committee chambers in 20 minutes. We'll say 2:50. Please be prompt. I don't want to stay as real late today.
2:50. All right. Vice Chair of Budget and Tax.
We'll let the members know.
All right. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you know what time we're coming in on Monday?
I think we're going to do 8. I think there's a lot of things scheduled. 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
on
Okay,
Monday.
great. Let's do
subject to change if we.
So
well,
then we'll do a voting session on Monday at 1 p.m.
Monday at 1 for JPR. Okay. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Middle Eastern Shore.
Thank you very much. I just had a question for the Vice Chair of B&T. Do we need to hang around?
Oh, no.
I would hang around for a little while until we find the chairman.
Well, some of us had the polar bear plunge. I'm just trying to clarify. Thank you.
Let's see if we have other announcements quickly. And see. Yes, Chair recognizes the Finance Chair.
2 o'clock on Monday, Finance.
Okay, 2 o'clock on Monday for Finance. All right, we're trying to see whether or not, look, there are a lot of conversations going on about the budget, so Chair recognizes the Senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. While we're waiting for our good chairman to come back, I did have a comment about the bagels today. So we had a wonderful group, the owners of Towson Hot Bagels came by and provided bagels in each of your offices in a green or orange bag. The bagels were made in such a manner that the coloring matched our Maryland state flag in honor of Maryland Day. But also there was information about mental illness and suicide. Jerry Asuno, has established a nonprofit to raise money to help with this issue. He's reached out to Congressman Raskin. They're going to have a golf tournament in the summer. And again, just an opportunity for them to promote their wonderful bagels, but also to remind us of the need every day to pay attention to folks. We've had a lot of pressure this past few weeks today, and we need to be attentive to the needs of our family and our friends and our colleagues. And I have to tell you, I'm very proud to be in this room. We do good work. We don't always agree, but I hope we do it, continue to do it in a respectful and loving manner. I really mean that. It's been a very interesting day. I really enjoyed the presentation of the Gavel. Remind us, Mr. President, what group was our military?
Sons of the Revolution. Sons of the Revolution.
No, the military group.
Oh, Maryland 400.
Maryland 400.
The reenactors.
I got to tell you, their uniforms, their attention to detail, their music was very inspiring. We had some new folks over here on my side of the chamber, and they were just very, very impressed. And we thank you for organizing that. And again, we remember Senate President Emeritus Miller for kind of planting the idea and moving it along. And we're very blessed for that. And I want to thank you, Mr. President, to allow me to make these remarks.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you. That was a really wonderful presentation, and that Basilica event was, while a little long, it was very, very good, and they a fair number more of the reenactors. It was impressive. All right, any other announcements? Yes, Chair recognizes Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Sorry, just belay the last. We'll do 3 p.m. on Monday for voting.
All right, we're thinking 7 on Monday.
That's fine.
Okay, it does look like B&T is 3:30. Is it? Let's see if that's, so it sounds like there is going to be committee this afternoon. 3:30, I believe, sounds like 3:30 for B&T today. All right, any other announcements? Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Baltimore County.
Yes, we were planning on having a delegation meeting at 2 o'clock. I guess we're going to have to change that. So, but it will be Monday afternoon. I don't know how many bills that we have. Okay, so I'll work it out, but keep your computers on guard, and we'll send you an email as to what's going to happen. So thank you.
All right, keep your eyes for your email, Baltimore County. All right, I think it does look like it is today now for 3:30 for BT. So, all right, any other announcements? If not, let's do a quorum call before we adjourn.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Monday, March 28th at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Monday. Without objection, so ordered.